Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 84th livestream from the Misfit Gamer Studios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. On today's Deeper Discussions, we have the part 2 of the Complete Psionics Handbook. Psionicists Handbook that we started last week. So we are going to continue on our read. We are going through the entire complete book. We finished the introductions. We finished basically everything about what a psionicist is and what second edition has presented to us. We went with a little bit of a history lesson on the psionicist. We went through how you actually create one. What are the prerequisites? What are the prime requisites? What are the things that you need to have? What are the things that you might want to have? And what are the basics for actually getting the character going? So, after all of that, the last sections that we have on the list are going to be psychic combat. So we're actually going to get to see how this psionicist works in combat, which is actually one of my favorite things to see, actually how it gets displayed, and just really gets to highlight what it can do. Because as much as I love this class, because of its versatility, it does really shine as a highlight character, not a highlight character, like a supporting character. It's definitely a support character in combat, but is enough of a support that can actually turn the tide of a lot of battles. So I really think that it's kind of clutch, but definitely not like, your main star. And on top of that, it has all the versatility with, plot points that the DM can use, as well as a lot of role play benefits. So as I said, I would say that hands down, the second edition Psionics is my favorite class D&D has ever done, and again, it's mainly because of the versatility, the usage of it, and how second edition kind of presented it. So if you missed anything, go and check that out on our YouTube channel. I did post the link in chat to our YouTube channel. We have all of our live VODs there, so you can go check out last week's episode when you're done with this one, because it will catch you up on basically everything you need to know about a psionicist. Today we're going to go over psychic combat, how it's used. We're going to go over all of the power. So we're going to go over all of the disciplines, all of the sciences, all of the devotions. We're not going to read every single word just like we did last time. We might summarize some of them, but we're going to get a really, really good idea of what this psionicist can do. And then next week, Kage is going to join me again, where we are going to sit down and he is going to basically try to build a psionicist in High Point. So we're not going to go exactly how the book, how we've been talking about it in the book. We're going to give you guys an insight on how it would be like to build this in High Point with me as a DM and Kage as a brand new player like you guys would be. So we think that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to give us an opportunity to open up into some really other fun episodes where we can show you a lot more. We can showcase a lot more about High Point, how we play in High Point, how we develop characters, and basically eventually bleed that into actually gaming in High Point with Kage and Vixie and everybody else. So we are looking forward to that. These are just the breadcrumbs, the things that are going to get us there. Another quick update for you guys. If you guys are going to be here on Monday, technically Sunday is the official 1-year anniversary of D&D Discussions, and Monday will be the 1-year anniversary episode. It will be episode 85, but we will have been streaming for 1 year. So join us for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. We don't have a homebrew review item just yet because you guys were so awesome and flooded us. I think we have like 15 or 16 at this point, and we were struggling last week because we didn't have any, and now all of a sudden we have more than we know what to do with. So bear with us. We will be making an announcement on the Discord this weekend about who will be on the docket for Monday. And we will try to, again, always, now that we have so many, we will always at least try to have 3 weeks planned out. So at any point, you guys know what's coming up. So that way we can kind of just keep it fresh and keep the homebrew review moving. But that way, if anything new comes in, we can easily slot it in without having to worry about, 3-4 weeks out. Or beyond 3-4 weeks out. So join us for that 1-year anniversary on Monday next week, and we're going to be doing the psionicist build. But today, Kage is here because we are going to continue reading about the psionicist, psychic combat, and all of the powers. So with all of that said, what is up, my friend? How are you today?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. This is it's gonna be another dive back into psionics. I watching Vixie, like it's getting me excited for the week after next, where I actually get to put together a character. So it'll be good. It'll definitely be good.
Yeah. Well, the next weekend should be when we do it. Not that, because we're going to finish the sounds this week, but yeah, next week. So next week, really excited. And then just so everybody also has an idea. So you are going to be here on Monday, where we will have a homebrew review. We just don't know exactly which item has come through just yet. We just have to figure out chronologically. We have some new people in as well, so we want to make sure we get those items on. So we're going to be doing an update in the Discord. So if you need that, if you want that update, join the Discord. Link is also in chat. And then you'll be here next Friday. We will do the Psyonosis build for High Point. Now, the following Monday, you are not even going to be available, right? You won't even be remoting in.
I will be out. I will not be able to stream that Monday. But I should be back. The Friday after. Everything should be
okay. Yeah. So normally, just so you all have an idea, because of the way that we've kind of developed homebrew review, one of the issues that we ran into before is when I've done homebrew review on my own, what ends up happening is the very next week, everybody wants to know what Kage thinks, so we end up having to do a summarized review, which we don't feel like does it justice, because we don't really get to like sink our teeth in, and even though I'd be able to go through it all, I won't have the same ideas and the same thought process, because I won't have Kage to, build off of, and we won't have the soundboarding the same way that we normally do. And then, we'll cut into other time because everyone's going to want to know what he thought about that item. So we've learned that High Point or homebrew review by myself doesn't tend to work, just because it always ends up bleeding in. So what we might do tentatively for the future is whenever Kage can't make it for a homebrew review, what I may end up doing is substituting a High Point build, or, because we've done the high-low from D&D Beyond, and I don't actually know how you guys like that. I need to do a poll or something in Discord to know if you guys actually like the high-low episodes, because it's on, it's on theme with homebrew review. It kind of keeps the flow going, but I really actually, because right now we don't do YouTube content, and because I'm not even really an affiliate yet, because with this, I know for a fact we get the most interaction from you guys when we're reviewing your items, which, why wouldn't that be it? But, realistically speaking, I don't know if y'all would prefer the high-low episodes where I take the highest and lowest from D&D Beyond. And usually the only reason why I do 2 on those episodes is because D&D Beyond rarely has anything of substance that I can talk at length by myself for that long. So I usually have to do 2 of them to fill in the time. I mean, you guys remember the last time I did it, I did like 3 or 4 of the lows, because they were just there was a good amount. So that's typically why
this is a high-low. Why is there 4 of these?
Exactly, right. So yeah, if you guys like that, I would definitely like to know if you guys enjoy the high-low series, because it does kind of just give us an opportunity to keep the momentum going. But if you would be more interested when Kage is not here, for me to present something from High Point, some aspect that I've put in that's not of the book, I can start to develop that too. I can start to look at topics and things that I can talk about and bring to the table that I've done or changed. So I don't know if that's really what you guys want to see, because again, High Point's so specific, and it's be a lot of context. Like I couldn't really, I could show you the classes, I could go over, individual classes, but I just don't know if I could talk to them about them at length the same way I can, helping, with ideas about someone else's builds. So, let me know what you guys think in Discord. Definitely want to know what you guys would prefer when Kage's out. Because otherwise, again, it's just kind of I want to fill the time, but I don't want it to just be dead fill, right? I want it to be something of interest for you guys. All right. But yeah, other than that, I think that was all of the updates. Yeah. 1-year anniversary. I cannot believe I've been doing this for 1 year. I remember doing this like the first time. I remember doing the first intro before I even realized I wanted to like have an official, like consistent intro. I remember it was just like one of the first, I was just like, how am I going to start this? Right. Like, because it's so funny. I watch a lot of, like the majority of the streamers that I watch are YouTube creators. So the majority of streams that like Twitch streams that I watch are like post edit on YouTube. And so I find that fascinating and interesting, is that a lot of, I'm so mad. I absolutely cannot stand OBS right now.
Is there anything to do about that, or is that something you...
I can bitch and complain about it. did you keep all my settings at least? You did, okay. What is going on with your camera?
I don't know. Let me see if I can turn it off and turn it back on again. It's fine in
I wonder if
Discord.
it's my.
It's just how it's displayed.
I wonder if it's just my my internet right now. I don't know if I'm having any issues, y'all. Bear with us. I mean, I'm not getting any frame drops yet. I don't know why OBS just randomly crashes on me like that. Like now my Stream Deck doesn't even work. Yeah, none of my buttons work right now. No, my it's basically disconnected from it, so I would need to restart my whole system. So I'm just going to do it manually, old school way. I mean, how better to do it for the 1-year anniversary than to have to do it manually like I used to?
Hey, gosh. I mean, it's just like shaking the dust off, you know?
Right.
That's how we do.
Well, it's funny because I was just literally just talking about like my first stream and just, yeah, I just remember not having the Stream Deck. I remember just, you know, having so little in terms of scenes and sources, and it was just so basic. But yeah, I remember doing the intro, and I remember I hadn't even decided that that was just going to be a thing for the show, because again, I was so influenced by most of the streamers that I know also producing YouTube content. So I kind of went into this with an episodic mindset and not just a I'm just going to go live and just chit chat and see where it goes kind of mindset. Man, what is going on?
Oh no, my face is melting.
And it's not me. There's nothing I can do to like change your video quality. Like,
That's
I don't think
so weird because can you look at me in Discord?
I mean, it's the same. You know, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same for me. You're just completely.
Is it really?
Yeah, you're just completely messed up on my side.
Maybe it is my internet. Because I'm looking at myself in Discord and I look clear as day.
Yeah, but that would be that's directly internal though. I mean, now you're back. Yeah, now you're fine, but.
All right, let me.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Let me.
But I am kind of glad that I stuck with the intro. I like it. It's catchy, I think, and I don't know. It was I can't even remember at what episode like it finally clicked that I'm like, this is a thing, and I'm gonna just this is the thing I'm gonna do. I you know, because I don't even yeah, because I think I started the intro. I always knew I wanted to like start out with like greetings gamers. Like I know I just kind of wanted to start that, especially if I was going to do like a YouTube series or anything. So I kind of like that. And it's so funny because when I do catch most streamers live, like very rarely do they have an intro. Like they'll have like, you know, their countdown, but that's it. Like most streamers, that's their intro. They just go on camera and now they're live streaming. And I don't know. I don't know why I do what I do, but there is just something. I think again, it's the influence of knowing that eventually I'm going to do YouTube and I want videos, and so I'm just pre-thinking instead of doing intros later, I can just do them now and just, you know, cut them every time. But I don't know. There's something about just kind of like I think that idea of knowing that there's going to be something at the beginning of the video. So I kind of always like that at my you know, myself to kind of like, maybe it's just subconsciously me trying to like spur a little bit more of that interest of people like showing up on time, just because I don't know. There's always that thing of like, you know, why animes, you know, there's two types of people who skip the intro of an anime and the people who like religiously listen to the intro. Cause like some people like that's a big deal, right? Like it's that consistency, right? You hear the song, you hear the things.
It was a lot more. It happened a lot more when shows aired on like regular TV. When you were,
exactly.
Like, waiting for the show to show up, it was almost like the beginning of your ritual. When you like binge stuff now, I feel like a little bit of that gets lost.
I mean, I can understand if you're going to watch like 4 or 5, you know, 16 episodes of the same thing, all, you know, back to back to back. You don't want like, you know, all of the intros all the time, but. I don't know. I've kind of just grown to it. I think, you know, I remember doing the first one. I said, welcome to the first live stream, mainly as like, it's the first one, right? I said that specifically to just kind of call out forever that was going to be like the beginning. And then I don't even know what like spurred it on the second and the third time to say that, you know, the second and the third live stream, but I think it was around the 4th or the 5th when it just finally clicked of like, no, this is the intro. Like, this is exactly what I'm going to say. And I don't think it's ever changed. I'm pretty sure Greetings, gamers.
Yeah.
Welcome to the number live stream from the Misfit Gamer Studios. I'm your host, Vortex. This is D&D Discussions. I'm pretty sure that's pretty much just been for a year now, twice a week, pretty religiously, twice a week for a year.
Yeah.
That's
I
crazy.
mean, on technical difficulties, I don't think we've really missed much.
No, I mean we've missed a handful, but I mean it's weird because it's much different to obviously be a live streamer than a YouTube creator, right? Like we haven't been editing and publishing twice a week for that's a whole different monster that we have yet to even get into.
Yes.
But I'm kind of proud of myself for that consistency. I remember making it to the 6-month mark, taking the time that we did for holidays, and then coming back and then having 50 episodes in the belt at the start of the year. Like we came in this year, start of the year at 51, and it was kind of cool because 51 started on Monday, so it's been 1, 2, 3, 4. It's been kind of this it's been a great pace. There's been times I've actually been worried that if I miss one episode, I've literally thought, am I going to forceful? Well, and I've thought, should I just cancel both episodes? Like if we miss a Friday, should I just cancel the following Monday just so the number scheme doesn't mess up? I know that's probably stupid, but there's part of me that's just it is kind of nice to have even and odd days, alternating Monday and Friday. So I kind of always know what episode it is. And then you kind of always know, I don't know, maybe that's just me. I'm a little bit weird like that. But yeah, it's very crazy. We're getting up to the 100th episodes coming up too. I mean,
I know we're gonna have that for the years out, man. That's gonna be cool.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It would have been interesting if those two had lined up, but I don't think mathematically that would work, depending on with all the ones that we've skipped and everything. But that would have been interesting for mathematically to line up with the 1 year and the 100th episode would have been really fascinating. But yeah, I don't think we're big enough to do anything, super fantastic and great for the 1 year. We do have potentially, if all goes right, if we hit affiliate over the next couple weeks and that happens before the 100th episode, cool. I am really thinking about doing a giveaway. So if we are at affiliate level and have, right before that, that would be really cool, I think, to do a giveaway for our 100th episode. Because that's just a couple weeks away, man. It's just, we're at 84, so we are 12 weeks away, or 6 weeks away, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah. But it's great. It's fascinating. I love it. It's just, I'm super excited. But yeah, just things to look forward to for all of us, for us to look forward to, for you guys to look forward to. I hope you guys join us for that ride. So chat got reset because we restarted. So let me propagate the BS that y'all want to see. And yes, we did see some people, so I did see that we have Cosmic and Hoilepa already in the chat. Thank y'all so much for being here. It's fantastic when you guys show up so soon. Always nice to see you guys there. Hope you're interested for today's episode, at least for both of you. Hoilepa, probably some good background for you, because not going to be getting into anything too spicy today, because we are just going to be completing the read of the Psionics Handbook. So before we get into this, we're not going to do any kind of summary of everything else we've done, because we did so much on that last episode. But do you need, Kage, any refreshers or anything that you want to kind of any questions that you had from the previous episode before we get into psychic combat? Oh, we are frozen on Discord, so we may have lost Kage. It does look like we lost Kage, so give us one moment. Oh, we got sound. We got sound. No video, but we got sound. Technical difficulties. It's fine. It's fine. We will deal. I'm hoping by the end of the year I can upgrade the computer, so we'll also have less issues.
I'm still here.
Oh, I hear you. Can't see you. Well, we might be getting something. All right, We are on chapter 2 of the Psionics Handbook. All right. It's simple. Yeah. Oh. Wait, do we got it? Hey, we got something back.
My goodness. Stand by one moment.
All right. We're doing this. All right. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the last episode. I don't know, from maybe compared to some of our other content, it may have been a little dry because we're reading through the book. But I don't know. I find this stuff kind of fascinating, and I want to experiment with different types of content. It may not be great for a live stream, but it would be interesting to see how it does on YouTube. So yeah, if you guys, again, we want to know your guys' interest. We want to know what you guys like and dislike. So let us know in the comments. Let us know on Discord as well. Which of these episodes that you do really appreciate or what you want to see more of, because I would absolutely not mind doing these multi-parter classes throughout the, just different editions, like actually just reading through and building, different characters from different classes from different editions. I think that would be a lot of fun, but I really want to know if you guys would actually watch that. All right, how are we doing? We got audio back, video back?
Fingers crossed, man. We've been acting crazy out here. I'm hoping things are all right. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Hopefully I'm functional. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. So, again, don't really want to do any big summary or anything else like that because we covered plenty in last week's episode. But do you have any questions or anything that you need a quick refresher on before we can begin? Just anything that,
I'll just run through basics of what I remember, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Basically, we are dealing with a class. They use the majority of their abilities using these. I forget exactly what they're called. The psionicist points. Actually, I have
psionic
in my
power
notes.
points.
Yes,
Psychic power
yes.
points.
They use those, and they have to make a roll anytime they want to do the check. And there are different ways, things that'll happen, and we'll get into like the combat and stuff like that. But there are 3 levels. There are the disciplines, the sciences, and the where's my thing? And the
Oh, that's right. We actually have. We don't have to worry if your thing is too messed up. We don't have to worry about that actually, because what do I do?
devotions. That's the word. Found it in my notes. Devotions. You have what? Oh, that's right. We do have that thing. I totally forgot we were using that.
Question is, there it is. Look at that. Hey!
Very nice.
Jackpot.
Fantastic.
All right. So we had this started so we could talk about it. All right. So yes, you were correct. We have the disciplines, which are essentially, for those who need to know, schools, similar to schools of magic. They are just called disciplines. Sciences are major powers. Devotions are minor powers. If you want a quick list, here you can see the disciplines on the top right. And this is just a bit of notes that he's going to be taking for anything that he finds interesting when we build it out next week. So just I'll leave that up here for now. It seems like your video is doing fine.
Maybe use more space. That's totally chill too.
I think because it looks like. Okay, no, your video is doing just fine. We'll just have that open if we need it, to take notes or anything else like that. But yeah, no, you had it absolutely correct. Basically, you get psionic power points similar to a magic pool, like a mana pool. Equating it to a magic user. And then, yes, when you want to utilize magic, you have to make an actual skill check, because it's not magic, it's skills, it's powers of the mind. So you make a skill check, and then if you make a skill check, you do whatever the power says, and then you have one of 4 outcomes. You have success, failure, critical success, critical failure.
Also, as you level up, you get certain defenses as you go through, which are similar to your powers, but they're different from your powers, and you get them automatically.
Yes, you get defensive modes. There are 5 of them. You will get them periodically as you level up. They are technically under a specific discipline, but because they are automatically gained, there's no real reason to ever learn them through your psionics because you'll get them automatically over time. So you'll end up just burning a slot. And B, even though they are all part of a singular discipline, they do not count towards any of your calculations of what disciplines you can have.
I do have a question. Are they, because I know that we talked about there are certain things that you can do when you level up where you can put more points into one of your disciplines or one of your powers. If you can do that, can you do that with one of your defenses as well? And if you can, is taking it a waste if you can stack it like that? Does that make sense?
That is actually a great question because the defenses are technically just like any devotion or any science. There would be nothing stopping you from pumping extra into it. So in that particular case, you could say that, yeah, if you were trying to put more into your defenses, then yeah, you could end up stacking it.
Scale with that. Like, what would you actually get by putting more points into it? Is it just going to cost you less points?
Okay, well, let's reread that section really quickly because that's a good point. That will be a good matter of topic as we go through the powers. So, okay, here we go. A character can increase a psionic power score when he reaches a new experience level by relearning it. He repeats his studies, learns something new about a familiar power. Instead of learning a new devotion, and so it does say instead of learning a new devotion, so it may only be available for devotions, not sciences, which the defensive modes are, I believe. The character can add 1 point to his power score in a devotion he already knows. Similarly, he can exchange a new science for 1 point. Oh, no, you can do it for devotions and sciences. So yes, you can kind of like an ability score increase instead of a new feat. So it's kind of similar to that concept. Instead of taking a new ability or a new feat, you can you can put something into it, and what it does is it increases the psionic power score.
That's what it is. Increases your what you have to roll in order to make it work.
It improves your ability to basically cast it. So, for instance, the first one I rolled to, the power score is Wisdom -1. So basically, what that means, because we already went through this in the last episode, but what that means is you start with your Wisdom. So let's say you have a Wisdom of 12. You apply the modifier, which is a -1, which is an 11. So the power score of that ability to activate it is an 11. If your wisdom is 12, it's a wisdom -1. So you take it's an 11, and that's what you would have to roll under in order to successfully activate this power. You have to roll in a d20 under that number. So what this does is if you ever take an ability, what this does is it increases that ability score by 1. So instead of this being a wisdom -1, it would just be a wisdom check. It would just be a flat wisdom because it gets rid of the 1. If you did it again, it'd be a wisdom +1. So what it's doing is that wisdom at 12, instead of being an 11, then it goes to 12, then it goes to 13, increasing your chance and your odds of succeeding, because off of a d20, if you're just trying to roll under that number, the higher it gets, the less numbers you can fail on. Just kind of giving that to everybody else for visual representation. So yes, that is something that you can do. Now, keep in mind that, the majority of these have, modifiers ranging from, most of them are negative. I think they're, so it's like this one right here is an intelligence +1. So you have some powers that automatically have abilities, that might have a +1, but the most I think I've ever seen on like the average is like 3 to 5. So there are a lot of -1s, -2s, but like the higher ends 3 to 5, there is one right here that they -12. So it's a wisdom -12. That's how much it is to cast this power. So there are
innately it's a -12?
Yes, it's a power score wisdom -12.
Okay. Do me a favor, mark that one because I want to look at that spell.
We're gonna go through all of them.
Let's
We
go.
will look through all of these. So yes, we will. It's if you want to know what it is, if you want to make a note of it, it's in Meta Psionics and it's the Empower. That's why
Empower.
it's Empower.
Okay.
It's the one that basically boosts any other psionic. Like the actual Empower spell, like it basically takes any of your psionics and makes them stronger. So in order to do that, you have to basically have like an extremely good check and then that. So there are a couple of these where taking it multiple times would benefit you, but a lot of the time, you know, when you're looking at these, depending upon, I would say that in my opinion, when you would do that, like when you would take the extra point in it, is if the power is in, say, your dump stat. Like, let's say you don't have a great like even though, strength and constitution or constitution is one of the like the prerequisites or the prerequisites for this. Like if constitution is your lowest and you have a lot of powers using it, you may want to, double up those ones, or you may do like I did. One of the things that I love about psionics, right, is as you level up, you are not tied. The only thing that you're really limited by is your main, right? Once you have your main, you can't have anything go above that.
Right.
So when you have that idea, and because the way that you level this up over time, this is one of those great times where it's like at level 5, you could be like, oh, I'm going to take this new this new discipline just for this one power, and then I'm never going to touch that discipline again. But you can sit there and like crank that one power up a few times to basically make it to where it's almost guaranteed to happen. And that's another benefit, is if you have a stat that's like at 17 and you take a power that has like, that power score -1, or even if it doesn't have a modifier, and you rack your power score up to like a 19, you basically can only fail if you crit. So it's one of those things where there are times where you might want to do it if that's the build that you're going for. But in my experience, it's rare that you're going to be on the cusp of a singular power that is so beneficial that you're like, no, this is the one power I never want to fail. There are powers in here that you could see that, but in terms of the build, like we're going to go through next week, I don't know how beneficial I would say sacrificing a whole new learned power because of the interplay with all the powers. I just don't see the benefit. I would much rather have a whole new power than one that's slightly easier to cast. But that's me. And I'm really curious to see if you'll have the same thing.
I'm very curious because I have some ideas brewing already as we're talking. So we'll see what ends up happening and if it's even valid.
Yeah. And I mean, again, the psionics, like there's so much. All right. So let's get into it. We are now, for all of you following at home, we are now on chapter 2, psionic combat. All right. So we have psionic combat. This one's actually kind of, hopefully we'll be able to get through this relatively easily. The game likes to make it seem like it's going to be super simple. We'll see. I've had, just like with Thaco and other things, I've had some people complain that this is super complicated. I think this is one of the best mechanics. Like I mean, again, I know Thaco is a problem for people. I know some things that second edition did are a problem for people, but really, like, the way that psionics work, I'm really happy with just the overall build of this. And I would like to see something like this come back in a future edition. All right, so combat. Combat featuring Psionicis is no more complicated than a fight between one or more wizards. It's no more complicated than that. In fact, it's similar. It's so similar. During a battle, Psionicis and wizards tend to employ the same tactic. They avoid enemy hackers and slashers and focus their efforts on the strongest opponent or shore up defenses where needed. This is kind of basically where I said that they're great supporting characters, right? And more so than just like a good healer or a good, glass cannon, but supporting characters in the fact that more so than a healer or a wizard, a Psionicist can literally be like a consistent turning point in a battle, right? Like they can basically almost guaranteed be that thing that you bring in a battle as the ace up your, up your sleeve kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, it is pretty true. Very rarely are you going to have a Psionicist that wants to be up in someone's face unless you're going to be like multi-classing. This is definitely something that you want on the sidelines. And that's another thing, because playing this character is a little bit more like that, because you are not a wizard, because you don't do things open out into the world. People don't really know what you're doing. It's actually a lot easier to be in combat without actually being in combat, if that makes sense.
So with that I need to keep something in mind. Is the plan when I make this build, and I'm totally fine either way. Is the plan when I make this build to be a pure Psionicus build so that we can fully look at Psionicus, or is this just a do whatever and potentially multi-class into
I mean,
other
it is
things?
gonna be up to you, because I don't want to treat this as a kind of like, bringing you on like my first time I did, and just kind of show off like how we would walk through the process, right? Like the kind of questions we'd ask, the way that I would help guide a new player through this. Now, if we want to do a multi-class, I mean, I really would like to do a full show off of what a full build could do.
So
But
that
again, if during that conversation it's looking like that wouldn't be what you would do, if you're just like, hey, this is really cool, but it's not the kind of gameplay I would want, then we can, build off of it. I would prefer to do a more targeted just a Sionis character. But maybe we'll do both. Maybe we can do kind of like a side by side to see how you could
I
build it.
I, I
The only
like I
downside
like that
is
idea.
because I do
I
like the idea of
think
multi-classing it, but showing off what it can do by itself first, because there's so once you multi-class, there's unlimited options, right? I'd really like to show off like what is this build all about by itself,
I
and
I
then we can
I
take it
like the
somewhere else.
challenge of going down that road, and that's kind of what I was hoping for. When it comes to what you can and what we're trying to do here. So it just makes a lot of difference for what types of things I think of when we're talking about how we're gonna move forward with this. But
Nope, I totally
anyways,
understand. No, perfect. I like it. I like it. All right. So, a lone psionicist caught by enemy fighters is in serious trouble, and that can, with low levels, that's 100% true. Higher levels, I mean, at higher levels, it might be one of those you're not locked in here, or I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me kind of situations, but we'll get into that. Unless he can summon, create, dominate, or otherwise garner help, he'll probably be overpowered. So I love that they're already slipping this in of kind of giving you that subtle hint of pay attention, right? This is how I interpret it, right? Because I look at like who wrote this, what they're writing it for, because a lot of people just, again, we've talked about this before, like rules is written, people just read what's there and don't think about where it came from. So when I read this, unless you can summon, create, dominate, or garner help, those are some good call outs, because summoning, we all know what that is. Create, we all know what that is, like basically conjuration spells and things like that. But then dominate is an actual ability, right? So it is showing off that there are combat related things here, and it's kind of nudging you into the thing of be mindful. If you want to be in combat, or if you don't want to be useless in combat, keep that in mind as you're building. And that's what I take in here, right? As I take it, it's that subtle hint of you can do what you need to do, but it isn't going to be a jack of all trades out the gate, right? And then for this reason, psionicists, especially NPCs, rarely travel without an escort if they are expecting trouble. Which I love that this starts out like this, because if you think about it, this kind of flies right in the face of the Old Gods campaign. But then again, the way that the high point flies in the face of a lot of standard gameplay. So, I mean, most people,
but
I don't think most
also
DMs play one-on-one as a standard rule of thumb. So I think that already kind of sets me off apart. But it is funny that with the Old Gods campaign, it's running a duo, just a Psionicist and a Bard. The two classes you would never think to run solo or without support, and y'all are running them side by side and doing fucking fine, by the way.
we just being creative about our solutions. That's all.
Well,
That's all.
and to be fair too, I intended that gameplay to represent what you guys were, right? Like I'm not throwing you bandit ambushes and dungeons and things like that, right? You guys aren't playing to your weaknesses. The gameplay is playing to the strengths of the characters. So that's also a big
Right.
deal, right? Is being able to have a DM that expands beyond the expected gameplay and incorporates everybody's class and character appropriately.
Very true.
All right, so using powers. In general, a character can initiate only one psychic power per round. I'm going to repeat that because it's going to become important later. Specifically, the very beginning. In general, a character can only initiate one psychic power per round. Because just like with Magic, with, especially in second edition was very strict, basically one thing per round. Just like with Magic, one cast per round. But I do like it just says, in general, that's the general rule. However, it does go on to say there are two key exceptions. Once a power is initiated, a character can maintain that power for as long as they can continue paying the maintenance cost. So, unlike, like wizards and stuff, it's not like one thing at a time. It's just as long as you have the cost for it, as long as you have the power for it. This assumes that the power has a maintenance cost. If no such cost is mentioned in the description, the power cannot be maintained beyond its initial duration. And I do like that they cut that out right at the beginning before you even get into the powers. It basically straight up says if it doesn't have a maintenance cost, it does not continue. So that's flat out right out the gate. It's not like you can interpret, well, that means that it just doesn't have a maintenance cost. But the way it sounds like it should be forever. It's like, nope, right out the gate. No, if it either has a maintenance cost or it's a one and done. But yes, once you have a maintenance, so once you have a power up, you can do another power in the next round. And then if that power is up as well, you can have two powers up and then have a third power go out. So you can only initiate one per round, but that does not mean that you can't have multiples going on. The other exception, psionic defense modes. So we've talked about this before. Mind Blank, Thought Shield, Mental Barrier, Intellect Fortress, and Tower of Iron Will do not count against the one power per round limit. A character can always use a defense mode and initiate one other psychic power in the same round. So whether or not you've already activated it or whether or not a Psionicist comes into combat and then you want to activate it, those are essentially free actions. Those do not count towards your psionic actions. Defensive modes are always one free defensive mode, and then you have your one psionic that you can do.
Okay.
And again, I like that because that's not standard. If you think about any mage that has a protective spell, you don't get defensive spells and offensive spells. Spells are spells. So right there, you can already kind of see. Now, granted, defensive modes aren't really major.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was just saying they all operate on the same level of spells. You can use shield specifically defensively, but still.
The closest you get is to reactions, right? The closest you get are spells that can be used as reactions, like Counterspell or something like that. But you also got to keep in mind the balancing here is that these defensive modes aren't typically for anything other than psionic combat. So, you casting magic at them or going at them with a sword, these defensive modes do nothing for that. So while it's good to have these separate, it doesn't make them straight out OP because it only really works against other psionic abilities.
That's fair.
But yeah, so I do kind of like that. Stays in line with the wizard, except there are those two exceptions of doesn't matter if you already have something maintained, and it doesn't matter if you're trying to use a defensive mode. Those don't count against your count. Power checks. So now we're going to kind of cover the power check. We've already talked a little bit about this, but we're going to cover that again in this chapter. The power check is fundamental to psionic combat. In general, no psionic power functions unless the character first makes a successful power check. And again, in general. But I really kind of want to point that out because we covered it in the last episode. The big fundamental difference is other than a wizard who has to basically they cast it, right? They usually 9 times out of 10, you just cast spells, right? You just burn the slot if you have it. If you have it memorized, you cast it. Sometimes you can do a to hit because it's an attack spell. Sometimes it's a DC check. But otherwise, in 5th edition, magic just gets cast. If you have magic to cast, you can just cast it. That's one thing that I also don't agree with in sense that it's interesting because psionics, have this like extra barrier, right? It feels like there's this extra barrier because you have to do a skill check, these power checks in order to activate it. But that only feels out of place in 5th edition because in 2nd edition, and you'll know this, in 2nd edition, there are essentially skill checks when casting spells. It's basically called spell fail. And in 2nd edition, mages had to roll a percentile dice, and you had a percentage chance to fail your spell. And it could be anything from your, it was really based on your intelligence modifier, and other things could affect it. But basically, you always had at least, I think there were ways to get a no spell fail, but in general, we'll use the term that 2nd edition likes to use. In general, you always had a 1% chance to fail on a D100 roll, right? It was always that 1% chance that you could fail. Because it could just be that you fumbled a word, your fingers got a cramp, you dropped you could imagine why this.
feel
Yeah.
devastating, but still, it was still there.
Yeah, and that's the idea. Is like, it wasn't meant to say that you were incapable of it. It was just the idea that spells are complicated, and no matter how many times you do them, you have a chance of just flubbing it. Like how many times? I mean, we've been 85 episodes, 84 episodes, and I still can't get our intro right every single time. You know what I mean? Like simple things like that. You would think that's something I do twice a week, and I practice, before streams. You think I would get that down, and I don't flub it anymore. But if I can't get 10 words right, and I say that twice a week. How can you expect a mage, right, to get a spell with hand movements and words that are in other languages perfect every time without fail? You know what I mean? So I prefer, that's why, again, this is one of those aspects of second edition and that I prefer, and why I like second edition, because second edition added that aspect. It added that concept of spell fail and this idea that you could, like innately just fail because that's just how you are. That's just what it is. What is this? Go away. Random program just popped up. So just one of those things I wanted to point out. Something that I miss from second edition and why I use second edition is because I like the idea that, especially with magic, right? Magic to me is just, it shouldn't be taken lightly. It shouldn't be taken just the concept of, I'm just more powerful, so I can just do whatever I want. So again, it sounds like a little bit weird to have a skill check, but as a reminder, in second edition, even wizards had a potential to not have a spell go off. And it could be anything from 1% all the way up to like 30%. So it wasn't always, inconsequential to have a spell fail.
Right.
Now, in general, they have to. Okay, so yeah, in general, you have to make the psychic, the power check in order to do it. Chapter 1 explains how this check is made. We've already gone through that in the last episode, so go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Modifiers apply for some powers. Furthermore, several powers require an additional power check before they'll yield a specific result. Check the individual power descriptions in chapters 3 through 8 for details. So basically, kind of like what we talked about, there are some powers, not all, but in general, powers have the chance to succeed and fail, and then some powers have any combination of critical successes and critical failures, or one or the other, or neither. So there's a bunch of different combinations. They don't always have a critical success and a critical failure, and sometimes they don't have both or either.
One that I always kind of remember hearing Vixie interacting with is when she's trying to get into somebody's head.
Contact.
Right? Yes, right. You're making contact, and you can maintain that. But while it's maintained, you can activate a certain aspect of that power, and like pay more PSP to like dive deeper, to like probe, to like get specific information out and like do more with it. And it's all based on this like power that's active and just sitting up there ready, but there are other effects that it has that you can. Now the question is every single time you want to do one of those additional effects, is that another power check, or is that more of like a response on the other person's end, like they have to protect themselves from it?
So we'll get into that too. But basically, if they're non-psionics, like if they don't have a defensive mode, because it all depends on if you're doing psionics against another psionicist. So we'll assume you're not, right? Because that's just, if they have defensive modes, there's a whole combat. Right. There's a whole thing about psychic battles, right? There's psychics in normal encounters, and then there's psionics with other psionics. But when you think about a psionic trying to do powers, right? So if you want to do something mental, if you want to take them over, if you want to read their mind, if you want to put something in their head, if you want to do anything mentally to them inside their head, the first thing you have to do is a power called contact, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But yes, once you make that, then you have to maintain it. But once it's made, you're in their head. Then on top of that, you would be able to do other things. But basically, contact's always that first step when you want to do something mental, which like in the Gold Gods campaign, because Alo's character, or your character Alo, had latent psychic abilities, I allowed you two to have the permanent contact link because of your latent psychic abilities, her being a psionicist, y'all being siblings, spending so much time. Like, basically, it was a background thing, which, again, for you guys to understand, this is how I build High Point out, right? That's not something in the book, right? Contact is always something that has to be made. I wrote that into these characters because they're siblings. They both actually have legitimate psychic power. It made sense that they would always have contact with each other and it's actually kind of a bad thing for him because she can lock him out of her mind. Like, she can basically close like her bedroom door, but it's basically like his bedroom door doesn't have a door.
But I do want to make the point that yes, we are siblings, but more than that, we are actually twins.
That is true. Yes, you are also twins. So there's a whole lot more that I took into account when I made that decision. It wasn't just, I'm going to make it easy on you. But because she's the psionicist, and I think that was also the reason why you rolled so well, so we tied it in. Again, the dice tell the story. He rolled for those latent psychic abilities and then rolled for additional psychic abilities. So he has 3, which again, the dice told the story, and then them being twins that they decided, it just made more sense. But because she's the psionicist, it's basically all under her control, right? So it's imagine them, again, living in the same house mentally, but she can close her door, but whenever she wants, she can open it, and there he is. And he can't ever kick her out, but she can stop him from like probing around. What's up?
I don't have any keys. I don't have any keys. She's got all the keys.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could put like, you could basically put like a rice paper wall or like one of those like paper walls up and be like, please don't look. But if she wants, she could just be like, get the fuck out of here.
Put her in front of the door. She's like, yeah, okay.
Awesome. Oh, what's up, Freeman? How you doing? Thinking about making a minimal Zin RPG. Interesting. Post more if you when you come up with some of those ideas. We'll definitely read up on those. Where were we? So that was the power that you guys were doing. We are doing pretty good. It was a pretty long week, pretty rough, but hey, you know what? We are continuing our psionics, having a good weekend ahead of us. So just try to chill, have a good Friday. Hopefully you had a good week. Where are we now? Okay, so psychic contest. So we just talked about a little bit that this is going to kind of work kind of like a wizard. You're going to get 1 psychic power per round. But psychic contests. Now, this is where we start to get into a little bit more about the nuances of psionicis, and we're going to start talking about like what it means for one psionis to go after another. Kage's camera. Yeah, he's remoting in right now, so he's calling in, so it's going to be a little bit blurry. All right, so psychic contest. So, psionic powers often clash head on. For example, one psionicist may make a psionic attack against a character with an active psionic defense. Which power prevails? Does the attack break through the defense? Does it bounce off? Basically, this is where the psychic contest comes into play, right? It's kind of like a different way of calculating, AC and THAC0, or just AC in general. Let's see. So resolving a psychic contest is simple when both powers are initiated in the same round. So again, gets a little convoluted sometimes, which is why people get kind of confused, but we'll kind of just go over it. So resolving a psychic contest is simple when both powers are initiated in the same round. The two contestants just compare the die rolls for their power checks. The character with the higher success roll wins the contest. If neither character's power check succeeds, or if both are equal, the defender wins by default. In other words, a tie always goes to the defender. So here's an example. An attacker is using Ego Whip. We don't know what that is yet because we haven't gone over the powers, but it is one of the psychic attacks that you can do. So attacker is using Ego Whip. The defender has erected Thought Barrier, one of the psychic defenses. Or the defense modes. Sorry, they're called defense modes. We want to get our terms right. So Ego Whip is an attack. Thought Barrier is a defense mode. Those have both been activated. The attacker's Ego Whip power score is 15. Means he has to roll under a 15 to succeed. And the defender's Thought Barrier is a score of 12. So they have to roll under a 12 to succeed. So Ego Whip is going to be easier on a D20 to roll. The table below shows several possible outcomes for the psychic contest of these powers. So we're going to go over a couple of examples. So remember, the attacker needs to roll a 15 or less, and the defender needs to roll a 12 or less. So let's say the attacker rolls an 11 out of 15 and the defense rolls a 6 out of 12. Okay? The attacker wins because their die roll is higher.
Okay.
Now, I want to point something out here because you know how I've talked about a long time about how I've been building High Point for over 10 years now. And I know that I get influenced a lot, but with all of the things that have ever influenced me, there's not always an easy way for me to be like, oh, this is where I got this idea, or this is what influenced me, right? I've talked a lot about how second edition roll sets were, right? Second edition was all about rolling under, right? So if you had a skill check, right? If you had a strength of 12 and you needed to roll a strength check, you needed to basically roll under a 12. That's basic second edition rules. If you rolled under a 12, flat out succeed. My DM, as I've mentioned before, the DM that I started out with, he had a specific rule where the further away from your number, the better it was. So a 2 out of 12 was better than a 7 out of 12. You know, it would be a better outcome because you beat it by a lot, is what we used to say, right? You beat it, but you beat it by a lot.
Correct.
Now, I've always just said this, that I like my version better because I've always put it in my head that it's about the usage of how much strength that you have maximum available to you, right? Like you have a capability, you have a certain potential, and that's like a 12 out of, you know, your strength of 12 means that out of 20, your capability is 12. If you were to exert anything beyond that, you could hurt yourself. And if you were to use anything under that, you're not using as much as you possibly could. So my mentality is I still go second edition rules of rolling under as a success, but I've always had the personal high point rule of rolling, getting as close without going over, kind of like the old Price is Right rule. Because the idea is that, you know, if you roll an 11 out of 12, you're properly using your strength, but not all of it. So it's more like, you know, you understand I'm gonna use as much, you know, 90% of the strength that I have capable and properly able to use, right? It's not my full strength. I mean, I could get an adrenaline rush and do 3 times that, but that's the kind of stuff that would hurt you, right? It's not controllable. I have up to a certain amount, and the closer I get to that, the more I look at it as you're like, you know, perfectly using what you have capable of. So that's just always been the way that I've judged it, right? It's as close without going over versus as low as you possibly can.
I don't want to go too hard on a tangent here, but I do want to ask if there was a player with that specific mindset of how your powers work in mind, if there was a player who desired to basically pull off one of those last ditch moments, I want to pull the car off of my buddy type deal,
Right.
like adrenaline rush type deal, and like hypothetically try and control it. Would you allow something to the akin of like, hey, I'm gonna say, hey, I want to overexert myself. I want to go hard. I want to do more than this power is supposed to do, and try and roll over? Or would that just be
You see, like basically saying doing a strength check, and you're saying that my strength's only 13, but I want to try to push it so a 15 will allow it, right? So basically, the way that I would answer that in High Point is that for one, that's what critical succeeds are for. That's what a crit 20 is, right? For me, that's exactly what a crit 20 it is you see a 20, regardless of what your max strength is, your max potential is what you can control. But a max 20 is that like mom lifting a car off her baby. It doesn't matter in that moment. You are using your max everything. You are absolutely at max. So that's one answer, is you do have that ability. It's called a natural 20. Now, in certain situations, if it thematically, somatically, narratively makes sense that you would be in that situation, I would probably already have accounted for it, I would think, in the role, and I would probably have already given you a modifier to justify, you know, doing that. But there is a third answer. So most likely I already would have had it. Second answer or first answer is really, that's what a natural 20 is for. But there is a third answer in High Point. If I didn't already take it into account, if it's not a nat 20, if I didn't take it into account and say, hey, you're in a life or death situation, I'll give you a modifier. If you could justify it to me, or if you could just flat out say, hey, fuck this. I know I could rip my arms out of my sockets doing it, but I'm going to fucking try. I may give you 2 rolls. I may give you advantage or something. I may, if you just straight out said, I am willing to hurt my character for this, I may let you roll, but what I will say is fine. I will let you, your strength's a 13. I'll let this go up to 16, but for every number over 13, you're going to take X number of points of damage. And if you roll over 16, I'll still let you succeed, but you're going to take maybe permanent HP loss. Like your actual cap HP may go down for the permanent injury you're about to receive. Because that's how I do permanent injuries, right? If you start to get a limp, you're most likely also, it might just be a limp. It might be a loss of being able to use like a pole, two-handed weapons. But I would do that. If it wasn't something I took into account because it's like you are life or death, if it's not a nat 20, but you really said, I'm willing to put my character at risk, I would just start inflicting negatives. I would say, fine, here's how much you can go with only taking just damage. But anything beyond that, you're going to take permanent physical effects. Like you may rip your shoulder out of your socket. That may be temporary. You may lose HP and you may temporarily lose your arm usage. But once your arm gets fixed at town, you may now never be able to wield two-handed weapons again. I may take that from you. Because even though your arm's now back in its socket, you've now sustained permanent damage. Even though you can move your arm, you could never wield a proper weapon. So those are my three answers. Is nat 20 is what it's for. But if it's a life or death situation, hopefully I've already would have taken into account and given you a modifier for it. And otherwise, if you're really wanting to push it, I would just inflict negatives.
Okay.
Because again, it's all about player agency. And like you said, if a player straight out says, I know it can hurt me, I know that this is dangerous, my character, because the whole point, in my opinion, of like why a roll can fail is because your character just can't, right? There are things, and sometimes it's not about, for a fact you could pull something off, but it would hurt you. And if you didn't absolutely need to or have the absolute motivation, you would just not do it because you would try, and then by the time it started to hurt, your body would tell you to stop. You have to be able to push past that.
It's really not that hard to bite off your own finger. It's about as hard as biting into a carrot.
Carrot, takes about that's it. But your body would not let you put the same force. It sounds easy, but your body would revolt against it. You would have to basically be 127 days, you know what I mean? Or 127 hour dude. You would basically have to be if I don't do this, there is you would have to know that, right? So again, I'm okay with situations like that. And if I don't catch them, or if the player is just that crazy, they're like, look, I'm a chaotic alignment dude. My hand doesn't matter. So if that's it, I will absolutely accept a negative, but I wouldn't just accept someone being like, oh, can I just, roll higher because I can roll higher? Like, no, you can't. That's the whole purpose of this, right? Is that you're not. But no, great question. Not a bad tangent because it does kind of apply to like what we'll be doing. So anyway, I said all of that, right? I went on my own little tangent of high point because I wanted to point this out. I'm not going to say that this is because I don't know for a fact, but again, I've always said why I like the rolling closest to the number without going over just rolling under and over what my DM used to do, which was the further away it was, right? Which means the lower the number. For me, because this is basically my favorite class and has always been my favorite class, part of me wonders maybe this is where I have got the first inspiration for that in second edition, because this is the first time that rolling under, because again, in my DM's world, rolling under and the further under you rolled was better. So when I first was introduced into this and we played hardcore second edition rules by the book, this was the first time that rolling under but higher mattered, right? It was the first time that I had to roll under my number but better than yours. And now that I'm just reading this, I'm starting to realize that this is the first time I've ever probably saw this. And now I'm wondering, was this what eventually influenced me to take this and implement it into high point? Now, again, I'm not saying that it is, but I'm even recognizing like this is probably the first time as I was a gamer, 15 years ago, this was probably the first time I ever got wind of the idea to do that. So yeah, just wanted to point that out. That was my whole big tangent about all of that, was just to point out that I probably got that idea, or at least the seed was planted with psionics. Okay, so back. Oh, did we lose you? I think we lost him again.
No, I'm here. I can hear you. Can you not hear
me? No, you froze. I can hear you, but you froze.
Do you see myself frozen? Weird.
It's fine. Oh, you're back. You're back. You're back. Okay. So let's go over a couple of those other examples. So let's say, again, the attacker has a power score of 15 to hit, so he has to roll 15 or under. The defender has a 12, so it has to roll 12 or under. So the second example, attacker rolls a 3 out of 15. Defense rolls a 9 out of 12. Defender wins because the roll is higher. Attacker rolls a 4 out of 15, which makes it, but the defense rolls an 18 out of 12. The attacker wins because the attack roll succeeded and the defender's roll did not. In effect, there is no defense this round. So it doesn't matter just because you rolled higher, you still have to roll under your own number. Let's say the attacker rolled a 16 out of 15 and defense rolled a 10 out of 12. Defense wins because his defense roll succeeded and the attacker's failed. Basically, the attack never went off. And let's say the attack roll is a 19 out of 15 and the defense roll is a 15 out of 12. So they both failed. They both failed and both rolled over. Neither power check succeeded. The defender wins by default because the attacker didn't. So again, even if neither... Now, granted, neither power went off, so it technically doesn't matter, but the defender still won. Let's say they both rolled the same number. So attacker rolls an 8 out of 15, and the defender rolled an 8 out of 12. Same number, but they both rolled under. Tied rolls, again, defender wins by default because the attacker didn't beat the defense roll. So no matter what, doesn't matter how easy it is to get your power off, you have to still beat the roll as the attacker. The defense will always have a tiebreaker, and the defense will always basically have the advantage, if you will. And then let's say the attacker rolls a 15 out of 15. So he hits his power score. The attacker wins automatically. His power check succeeded, and his roll is higher than the defender's power score, so no roll will beat the defender. Now, in this case, it's because the defender's score was a 12. Because the defender had to get a 12, because the attacker rolled a 15, there was no possible way that the defender could beat that score, so therefore he will automatically win, not because he made his power score. It wasn't because he did a perfect power score. It's simply it would have been the same thing if he rolled a 14 or a 13. He would still win.
Okay, so that is my question. If he rolled a 14, didn't hit his power score, but I, as a defender, rolled a 12 and did hit my power score, that would mean nothing.
Correct, because you still couldn't beat it. So it doesn't matter even if you crit succeed, even if, because it would have to come down to the rule of specific over general. If the powers we're talking about specifically said it overrules it or overrides it, then that would be different. But in this particular scenario, those powers that they're using don't have that. So because he rolled his power score that's over the maximum the defender could, he would just win, period. So again, if he rolled a 13, done. Game over. You cannot defend against it. Okay. So a little bit different than we're used to, but I kind of like this one too because, you know, it's interesting because I don't know if you have as a DM heard this, but over the years I've heard this a lot where players will make the argument. It's usually new players, but a lot of players will make the argument of like, especially when they have AC or crappy AC, they're like, but wait a second, he was doing this and this. Like, can't I make a roll to like dodge out of the way because I have like really big decks? And it's like your AC takes account of that. Like people don't understand what AC actually takes account of. It's not just your actual like physical piece of armor. It's everything. But it's one of those situations where this does feel kind of fun because when it's two psychics, like you both get to be involved. It's not just an automatic like, oh, just do what you need to do to me and I'll just sit here.
Instead of just one then the other.
Yeah, I do kind of like being able to feel like a part of like I actually defended myself. So all right, so those are just a couple examples of two psionics going at it with in the same round. It gets a little bit different, but otherwise that's just kind of same round combat. Because again, it's all about the what power score hits. All right, now let's talk about maintained powers. So in the example that we just did, powers were initiated in the same round of conflict. So that's important because, again, in the same round, when you try to attack me and I raise my defense, we are both going to roll our ability checks, and then it's, as long as we both win, it's whoever rolled the higher die, right? That's how you and I are going to do it in the same round of combat. But let's say you have already had something up, right? So some psychic comebacks involve powers that is being maintained, a power that was initiated in the previous round. In this case, the player whose character is maintaining the power. In this case, so let's say you're maintaining the power from last round. So in this case, you, the player maintaining the power, must make a new power check strictly to resolve this conflict.
Okay.
So last round, you made a power check, activated a power. It's up. This round, I'm now going against you. You now have to make a new power check against me because of this.
New power check. Okay.
Got you. Yep. You do, however, gain a +1 bonus to your power score because it's being maintained.
Okay.
Which I don't think is a bad thing. Yeah, so yeah, because in the last situation, in that particular case, yes, because it's up, you get the extra +1. If the contest roll fails, it doesn't mean the power fails. So let's say I attack you, you already have something up, you fail your roll, your power doesn't drop. It doesn't stop going like a normal concentration spell. It just doesn't do whatever it wanted to do that round. But it doesn't stop. You just don't get to... Yeah. So it's still being maintained. It's just not very well. So it's kind of like, it's like teetering, but it's still up. And then for the contest, the character ignores the failed check and instead receives a success result of 1.
Say that again.
So you gain a +1 to your power score because the power is being maintained. If the contest roll fails, it doesn't mean the power fails. It's still being maintained, just not very well. For the contest, the character ignores the failed check and instead receives a successful result of 1. I'm not really sure. Yeah, that is a little bit oddly worded. I'm gonna reread this real quick to myself.
Dang.
So I think that's just reiterating the fact that your power will stay up. You don't have to you don't worry about if you have a power failed mechanic. It's just because you were only resolving it for that conflict. It's just a direct, it's just a direct contest one more time. What's up?
It says that you get a success +1. So I'm curious if the next time somebody tries you on that power while it's being maintained, if you don't get an additional +1 to it because it failed the first time. That's kind of what it sounds like, but I don't know.
So for the contest, it ignores the failed check.
I don't know. Ignoring the failed, yeah.
Oh, so okay. So what I'm thinking is okay, if you have a maintained power and it has a critical failure, I think this is what it's trying to talk about, because these are, what you don't see is these are in quotes. So it's saying failed and success. So I'm thinking what this is saying, now that I'm understanding it, is if you fail your roll, but on a maintained power, your power still is maintained up. So if your power that's being maintained, because normally if you activate a power, it can have a success, a critical success or a critical failure. If it has a critical failure on, when you initiate it and you fail a contest while it's maintained, you don't get that critical failure's result. Because you know how most of them you'll crit fail on a 20. You just move that 20 to a 1 and you just automatically get it. So yeah, basically you don't fail and you don't get your crit fail if it's a maintained power. You only get crit fail when you initiate the power. That's what it's saying.
Initiate the okay. I got you.
Again, Again, not a lot of people. This is why some people complain because it's not perfectly written, but that's basically just saying that if it's already maintained, the crit fails only when it initiates.
Once you figure it out, like it is fairly simple.
Yeah, it's just getting there that it's kind of complicated. All right, so now here we're going to talk about multiple conflicts. So, in the thick of battle, a psionicist may be involved in more than one psionic contest per round. If he's using more than one power, the player must make a separate die roll for each power used that round. So if you have 3 powers being maintained and you're activating them all, that's 3 different checks you're going to have to, do in order to do all your stuff.
Okay. You can't activate them all in a turn if they're already being maintained.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want with them while they're being maintained. You just can't initiate only one per round.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, but you will have to use your separate die rolls each time you use the powers. If you're using a single power against more than one opponent, the player can make a separate die roll for each opponent. So that is the player's choice. Not that you have to, the player can. So if you have a maintained power that, let's say you have like something that's affecting 2 different players, like 2 different NPCs, and you have to make a power check against them, you can choose to make one power check that they both have to go against, or you can make individual power checks for each one. That's your choice as a player.
Singular choice, or do you make that choice every single time?
Every time. Every time you want to go do it. So that's the cool part about this is it gives a lot more...
Or you just wait until you hit your power score and say, hey, that one applies for all of them.
If your DM allows that, I say you have to call it before you roll. You don't get to decide before. You don't get to roll and then decide. You have to decide you're either doing it against both of them or you're doing one roll. I make it before the roll. I don't let you roll and then decide because that's a little bit OP. You know what I'm saying? That's a little bit OP.
Yes. Like, hey, look, I hit my power score. Now it's gonna fake both of you guys. Pew pew.
Now, granted, okay, Now, granted, if the player, I would allow that if the player like said, hey, I'm always going to roll separate unless the first roll is a power score. Then I want it to apply to everyone. I would let that roll fly because the balance there is that you're automatically going to do individuals every other time. But on the rare chance that you get a power score, I would let it fly for everything. But that would have to be stated at character creation. Like, that's not just a, hey, this one time. But that would have to be a standard. You never get to apply a single roll unless it's a power score on the first roll. And then, so again, if you're doing 5 people and it happens on the 3rd guy, oh well, you still have to make your 2 other rolls. You can't retroactive it. Yeah. So I would totally let that fly, but it would have to have that like modification.
That would be kind of interesting. I like that.
And it makes more sense too. If your very first roll, the very first activation is max, it might as well just flood out to everybody, right? I totally think that makes sense. All right, so. As soon as, okay, so yeah, you make the separate roll for each opponent. So you can choose to make one roll or multiple rolls. As soon as you roll a number you like, oh. Never mind.
Wait.
Never mind. So that's how I would have ruled it. That's not how the book rules it. The book is actually in your favor. So if you're using a single power against one or more opponents, the player can make a separate die roll for each. So you get that choice. As soon as you roll a number you like, so as soon as the player rolls a number they like, the player may use that result for all remaining psychic conflicts involving that power. So if you have 5 people and you roll on the first guy and it's like, you roll on the second guy, you're like, you roll on the third guy and you're like, that's it. It applies to everybody after that. You can just decide this one, it applies. So literally, it's not just every instance, it's literally every die roll for all future die rolls of that power.
It kind of is that psychic overflow mentality. So like once you hit one,
once you hit it, you're on board. I like that. So yeah. But I thought it was literally, I would have ruled it as you have to do it before the die roll. The game says no, it's every die roll. You can just decide, nope, that's the one, lock it in for the rest of the game. Or not the rest of the game, but like the rest of the usage. So that's cool. All right. So that's how multiple conflicts work. All right. So now we're going to get into psychic lock. So in some psychic contests, there is no clear-cut defender. For example, 2 characters may try to use psychokinesis on the same object simultaneously. Yeah. Told you, like this shit gets crazy. Like when you really think about like all the things you could do with this, you're like, wow, they covered the bases. So you'll do a little psychic arm wrestling instead. In such cases, the character with the higher successful die roll still wins the contest that round. In our example, the winner would control the object. So essentially, it's the same thing. You both activate your power, and you both have to not only roll under your power, but then it's whoever rolled the higher of the two die while also activating their power.
So, super quick question. You know how you can have multiple powers up at a time?
Yep.
Can you have multiple of the same power up at a time?
Not standard, but yes, there are ways around that. But you can't like for instance, you can make contact with multiple people, but you can't make contact with the same person multiple times. You can cast telekinesis multiple times, but you can't cast telekinesis on the same object multiple times. There are some that work.
Telekinesis itself multiple times. That's what I'm talking about. So
yes, you could have multiple objects.
Because if you think about it, you said that I can activate my powers at any point in time on my turn as long as I have them up and I'm concentrating it. So if I'm concentrating on 5 different instances of telekinesis, then I have 5 different instances of objects that I can mess with. Right?
But keep in mind that it's at initiation. So once you started controlling an object, you can't switch objects with the same telekinesis. You would have to reactivate another one. Like you can't. It's not like the power can just it's the contest of I'm going to pick that object up. Remember, because this isn't magic. It actually is proficiency, right? So if you pick an object up, that was what you did. You can't switch that telekinesis that's active to another object. That's a whole new telekinetic reach. That's basically like picking up another object with another arm.
I weirdly thought of it like when I'm concentrating on it, when I'm thinking about it, it's almost like a hand that's out there. Like I have this almost like a vector from
no, and it very much is like that. But the idea of changing objects would essentially be reinitiating the power because it has to move and then go do all of its thing again. So not quite like what you were saying, but yes, there are things that you can do to essentially like multiply certain powers, and we'll get into that here shortly. We're doing good for time. We are actually we're 2 pages away from the actual powers, and then those are going to go kind of fast because we can summarize a lot of the powers. All right, so psychic lock. So if the power check indicates a tie, however, the characters are deadlocked or psychically locked. So let's say you and I both went to there's a dagger on the ground, right? And you and I both went for it. We're like, I'm gonna use my telekinesis to pull it towards me. You did the same thing to pull it towards you, and we got the same power score. We both rolled an 8, right? We're fucking locked. We're psychically locked now. What does that mean?
I almost look like a lightsaber battle in Star Wars or something like that, where they just kind of like locked in on each other for a second.
So neither character wins that round. To resolve the conflict, both characters should maintain the same power during the next round and engage in new psychic contest. So basically, if you both went for it and you both tied, it basically just nothing happens, but you're both stuck there. If either character fails to maintain their power, effectively giving up, they suffer a backlash and lose 4d4 PSP immediately.
Wow.
Because you got to imagine, like you were saying, like the vectors, right? So imagine these 2 vectors reach out and you both grabbed this and you're both tied around this object and you say, fuck it. And it's like you do this and let go. It's like that, like in DBZ where when they're like forcing their powers together and then there's the big explosion because of the clash. I imagine it like that because your guys are like, there's this orb of energy that you're both trying to control. And when you back off, it basically is like it's they're trying to push you off of it. So with you let go, it's all of that excess force that you're letting go, right? Kind of like holding back those, like when they do the spirit bomb, they hold it back and then they let go and it starts to consume them. It's basically like that. Yeah. It just you've just let the tide flow out. So yeah, so if you get psychically locked, you do not want to give up. You basically you keep going, otherwise they're just gonna bitch slap the PSP out of you. Which just sounds like such a cool thing, dude. I'm gonna bitch slap the PSP out of you.
I'm curious if there's ever a moment where that would be a intentional strategy
to let go and let backlash. So there is technically a power that you can
Can you can you like where you would have reapplied that power? Can you apply a different power instead? Can you take the backlash and potentially do something
So
else?
there
Like
is a power that allows you to basically like stave off like damage to you to somebody else. So I mean there would be there, and there's another one where you could like life lock. You can life link to somebody, so basically you two share a life pool. So you could do that and then take the backlash, but it's only PSP loss. It's not health. It's only PSP loss. So you're not actually losing anything outside of your own abilities. So unless you had something that would trigger, like you could have, like, let's say you're, okay, so here's a situation. You could have a PSP crystal, basically something that holds PSP, right? And if you had a way to say store it and have it trigger where when I reach 10 PSP or 10%, trigger and fill me back up to full, because things like that can exist. You could say, if you were like, let's say you're at 15% and you're like, I gotta use up powers to get rid of this, and like maybe you need to use a big power, but you don't have enough PSP, right? You're at the bottom of, you need 20% and you're at 15. You could take the backlash, lose that 4d4 to drop you below the 10% in order to refill yourself with your contingency, and then that could be it. So, because remember, there is a power that we talked about before where you can take your PSP and store it. So there could be ways that there could be reasons why you would want to lose PSP if you had some sort of beneficial mechanism that activated.
Is it possible, like, that I could use a different power on that turn, regardless of losing? Like, I'll just take the loss of PSP. Say I got plenty to spare. I take the loss of PSP, and I do something different. So, like, we were having this telekinetic contest on this dagger that was on the ground. You keep going after the dagger, and I instead a spear that's behind you, and I grab that and try and.
I mean, yeah, like again, as long as you're activating a new power on your turn, yeah, you could technically do all of that. It's more of, that's the action economy of this player. Of, yeah, if you just give up that power and take the PSP loss, there's nothing stopping you from doing that, as long as it's your new turn and you haven't activated a new power.
Okay.
And then in any case, victory may be fleeting. If conditions are right, the loser can challenge the winner to a rematch in the next round. So if you're going after, like, if we're both going after the dagger and you win, if you don't like fully get it, I can reactivate my power and then do another second contest to like keep going against you. So it's kind of just one of those things where it's like, again, it's not always a one-time deal. It depends on what you're trying to do. All right, the combat round. Now we get into some of the fun stuff. So Psionic Conflict follows the standard AD&D game combat sequence. All psionic powers, excluding defense modes, are used in order of initiative. For example, if a psionicist wants to attack or plans to teleport to safety, he can do so when his normal chance to attack comes around. Psionic defenses work throughout the entire round, starting at the very beginning. Unlike spells, psionic powers do not have initiation modifiers. So, defensive modes. If you are last in initiation, but someone goes after you on initiative 1, your defense modes are working. They will automatically be available to you. You know, like you said, like if someone goes after you, you can automatically pop it up. It does not cost any of your turns. It does not have any modifiers based on initiative. The moment combat starts, your defensive modes are available to you. They're basically like reactions from the beginning.
Operating in the same turn as them doing whatever attack is that when it comes to how you manage the contest. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. So psionic powers require a certain amount of concentration. The character who uses one during a combat round can move only at half of his walking rate. So if you initiate a psychic power, you basically cut your walking in half if you've initiated it that turn. Because it takes concentration, right? So again, it's not magic that's just flowing from you. You are paying attention, so you can't move as nimbly and be as quick. But that's where the multi-classing comes in. You make something like Monk or something and add some of that speed back, and then no big deal. Like there's ways around that. But yes, a character who uses one. So once you've initiated one in that combat round, you will be at half your walking rate. Furthermore, you can be disrupted like any mage casting a spell. So you can be disrupted doing this. A power that is being maintained from a previous round cannot be disrupted, nor can telepathic tangents that were established in previous rounds. So basically, if you've initiated something, you can't, unlike a wizard who has a concentration spell and you can stop them from concentrating, once you've activated the spell, they can't stop you from keeping it up, but they can stop you from initiating it. There are ways to stop you from initiating it, but not a way to stop it once it's active.
So that's not a mechanical operation. That's like a power that does that.
What do you mean? Say that. What do you mean by a mechanic?
Meaning like it's not like we've just been talking about the mechanics of how things work, like doing your checks. Like that's just a part of the mechanics. There's not just it's nothing like counter spell. There's nothing like you have to what do you call it? It's nothing like a grapple check or anything like that. Like a psionic, just something it's nothing that's automatic. It would be something that you would have to take in one of your disciplines or one of your sciences or something to that effect. I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. So they can be disrupted, but once it's maintained, it cannot be disrupted, nor can telepathic tangents do that. If a power is disrupted during a preparatory round, the time invested in preparation is lost, but no PSP is expended when the power is disrupted. So it's not the same as failing a power, which you will use half the PSP. If you're disrupted using it, you will just not use anything. You basically just don't lose anything for it.
Got it.
All right, telepathic combat. So before a psionicist can use a telepathic power, they must establish contact with the recipient's mind. We talked about this recently, or just a little bit earlier. So contact is a telepathic devotion, which paves the way for other telepathic powers. So again, this isn't with all powers. It's specifically within telepathic devotion and all of the powers that come with it. Usually a single use of this devotion is all that's required. The psionicist uses contact first, then follows up with another telepathic power. Beings with little or no psychic talent, including wild talents, can be contacted this way. So psionicists and psionic creatures... so can psionicists and psionic creatures, provided they cooperate. So basically, what that's insinuating is that when you're a psionicist, you have defensive modes, but you also have essentially a latent psychic barrier. Like, you are a person of the mind. You have psychic understanding. So if you are a psionicist, you kind of automatically have a presence of my mind's locked away. So anyone who's not a psionicist, you can just cast contact, and you're basically, as long as you did the power, you're in. Whereas another psionicist, if you try contact, they will know, and they will automatically, you won't just automatically do it. If they're not willing, like if the psionicist is not willing, you will never make contact with them. You actually have to psychically attack them. Once you've damaged them psychically, then you can establish contact forcefully.
That's a really good analogy, is psionicists can lock their door and non-psionicists can't.
Exactly. And that's basically all it is
it's just like, boom, hi, what's up? How you doing? I'm here.
And again, there's a big difference, because a psionicist just naturally has a closed door. A psionicist's door is just naturally closed. If you want in, they have to let you in. If they do not let you in, if you try to make contact and they're not accepting people, it will just not happen, and you will have to attack it. You'll have to break down the door in order to do it. Whereas anybody else, the door is just open. You just walk right in, and as long as your power went off, you're done. That's where the
I don't remember the answer. Do they know?
Know what?
When you try?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're a psionicist, if someone tries to contact you, yes, you do know. Yeah, you get basically like some sort of... There's a lot of different ways to represent it. I think my DM's way of doing it was he always called it like knocking. Like, you would basically like, that was his way of doing it. I always just call it like a presence. Like you just, essentially you feel someone, like it's almost just the idea of like you feel someone like watching you.
Do you know
No, you just know that someone attempted. You just have the feeling that someone was at your front door. It's kind of like the doorbell, or, that's why he called it knocking. It's basically, someone asked to come in, but you're a psionicist, you already have defenses up, so the door was closed, but you did hear them at the door.
So how common is it for a psionicist to just walk in a room and just try and make contact with everyone just to see who's a psionicist?
Depends on who's playing it. If I'm playing it, that's exactly what I do, 100%. It's the first thing I usually do. If I walk in and find anybody useful, I immediately start trying to ping everybody. Usually if I'm playing a psionicist, I will ping the bartender or the shopkeep, because if I can, fuck, I'm going to basically get in your head and get better prices. If I'm looking for somebody, I'll just literally ping everybody, do ESP, and try to find the guy that I'm looking for or get the information that I want without talking to anybody. Portable portations in the on the island that for the Old Gods campaign that you guys met. How do you think he knew who you guys were?
I mean, that's fair.
He was basically in there, and he basically had the entire bar pinged. Everybody that walks to the door, he would know right away whether or not there's an issue. So it's kind of, I mean, because even Vixie's character, Safia, she even had the presence when she walked in the bar, and she couldn't figure out who until she was like, oh, that guy looks a little bit strange, and then y'all kind of figured him out. But yeah, she got pinged, and so did you. The difference is she knew that you both got pinged.
I didn't know. That's interesting. So because even though I am a psionicist, because of how I got my powers, I don't have would Alo's door be closed?
Yes, your door is always open. That's the problem. Is now that's why we also gave you the ability that when she activates one of her mental defenses, she can include you. Her mental defense envelops you. But the problem with you is that you are actually a danger because you two are always linked. You kind of are, in a weird way, a secret backdoor. Now, granted, she can close you off, which is the benefit. But because she's naturally always attuned to you, imagine the idea of if someone got to you in a way that neither of you knew, her defenses would be naturally dropped because she's used to having contact with you. She's used to letting you in normally. So yeah, if someone was in your head, she'd know. But if someone got to you, if someone tricked you, if someone convinced you to be on their side, what would stop her from trusting you, right? So the idea is you are technically a weak link, a backdoor, not because they could get into your head forcefully and then get to her, but because if she didn't know that you were taken over and you were compromised, she could just open up to you, and then whoever had that link, whoever was actually in control of you, could easily get in. So yes, you don't have the back door like she does, which is why she has to always basically be aware of what's going on, and she has to defend you. And that's why anytime there's psychic combat, she has to specifically call out that she's defending you with her mental barriers. Because if not, and that's why when you guys went to the Oracle, that's why you were affected by the flowers more than she was.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that.
All right. Okay, so telepathic combat. So yeah, psionicists have to cooperate with being contacted, or you have to challenge them and attack them and do all of that stuff. The contact devotion never works against a psionicist or psionic creature who does not allow it to work. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Literally just reading what I just said. This is true even when they're sleeping or unconscious. The psionicists normally have closed minds. The idea is that you know what your powers are, so you just naturally know to just shut yourself off. They can be selective, allowing contact with friendly power while closing their minds to hostile creatures or strangers. Exactly what Safia does with Alo. When a subject's mind is closed, he can only be contacted through telepathic combat. The text below describes 5 telepathic assault or attack modes that are used to establish contact with a closed mind. It also describes 5 telepathic defenses, which can help prevent such attacks from succeeding. Lastly, it explains what happens when these opposing powers clash. So this is going to be a little bit, important because this is specifically psionicist to psionicist. There are 5 psychic defenses, and there are officially 5 psychic attacks, specifically to create contact for the telepathic powers, right? No, so again, these are only for the telepathic devotion.
Okay, so this is just telepathy. So does that mean that the defense you can get whether you have the telepathy devotion or not? Because the defenses are
discipline, yes. Yes, correct. You will always get the defenses. You never have to actually learn the discipline telepathy, and it does not count towards your maximum devotions that you can learn in telepathy. But the attacks, you have to learn the discipline telepathy to know the attacks. So if you want to attack someone, you will have to be in that discipline, but you will always be able to defend yourself regardless. And within that discipline, there are 5 attacks, there are 5 defenses, and this is basically how they work. So, telepathic attack modes. There are 5 attack modes. There's Mind Thrust, Ego Whip, Id Insinuation, such a weird word. Id Insinuation. Psychic Crush and Psionic Blast. We'll go over these more in Chapter 7 as we go through the telepathy. We'll go into them more in detail. But essentially, against a mind that is open to contact, each of these powers has specific effects. For example, Ego Whip can make a character feel so worthless that they suffer a penalty to all of their die rolls. None of these effects occur unless the subject's mind is open to contact, however. So again, these are for non-psionic people. If the subject's mind is closed, aka a psionicist, an attack mode only serves to erode its resistance. If they are repeatedly struck with an attack mode, their mind can be forced to open and contact be established. So again, it's kind of interesting, and again, this is why people find it a little complicated, but these attack modes have two purposes. One against non-psionicists and against those minds that are just open and available, right? They have specific effects. But if it's against a psionicist, all it's there to do is take away whatever barrier is stopping you from making contact. So those are the purposes. That they have specific purposes, and then they have one purpose. So it's kind of that, you have to know when and where you're using them.
Interesting.
Learning attack modes. A psionicist learns attack modes in the same way they learn other powers. They must first have access to the telepathy discipline. Then they must first allot one of their devotion slots to the power. Only Psionic Blast is a science. So there's only one science, the rest are devotions.
Interesting.
A character could devote themselves completely to learning the attack modes and know all 5 by 2nd level. Or they could learn dozens of telepathic powers without ever picking up a single attack mode. That is the player's option. So you may or may not, depending on your campaign, or depending on how you want to play, you may never want to get into a psionic's mind. You may only ever want to mess with people that aren't psionics. Who knows? But again, I do like that where, unlike, the other areas where like you always get the defenses, this is 100% on you to build out that character. And I like this. They even have this section called the 1-2 punch.
1-2 punch.
Attack modes. Yes, the 1-2 punch. Attack modes differ from most other psionic powers in one key regard. A character using an attack mode gets 1 bonus attack with that power each round. An attack mode packs a 1-2 punch. The player rolls 2 power checks. Each of these rolls constitutes a separate attack, and if opposed, is conducted as a separate psionic contest. So basically, it's multi-attack. You just get a multi-attack when you're using these specific attacks. Both attacks must be directed against the same target. So, same target. Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
The initiation cost of an attack mode includes this double attack. So you do not pay twice. The initial cost of the attack automatically accounts for the fact that you get to use it twice. So you do not pay it twice. It's one time and it automatically gets hit twice. So yeah, you get to basically slap someone.
All attack modes, right?
All of the attack modes. All of the telepathic attack modes.
Okay.
All right, telepathic defense modes. We will go over this again because we did go over this a little bit, but we'll go over whenever this section has. So a character with psionic powers is not defenseless against telepathic attack modes. 5 telepathic powers, known as defense modes, help protect the character from unwanted contact. These powers are Mind Blank, Thought Shield, Mental Barrier, Intellect Fortress, and Tower of Iron Will. Although these powers belong to the telepathy discipline, they are common to all members of psionic classes. Psionics develop these powers naturally and as they gain experience, regardless of whether they have access to the telepathy discipline. We've already covered that. So again, you're just going to get these automatically. When a character activates a telepathic defense mode, it becomes effective at the beginning of the round. The character conducts psychic combat against every attack mode coming in their way. So the initial cost of the defense mode covers all attacks in the round. So once you activate your defense mode, anything that happens in that round is all covered already.
Got it.
At any point during the round, if he rolls a number he likes, he can keep it for the rest of the round, similar to what we said before. So once you hit that number where you're like, that's a good defense, I'm rolling with that. Just that's my new defense number. It's kind of like, pre-rolling your DC and being like, oh, that's the DC? Fuck it. Defense modes have no effect against any psionic power other than attack modes.
So, real quick, with that mindset, when it's like at any point in time I can say, yeah, I'm good with this. Say I say that at some point, can I change my mind and roll again later?
Yeah, absolutely.
Meaning,
But remember, it's only for
okay,
the one
so
round. It's only for that initiation, that initiative round.
okay,
So unlikely that you're gonna do that. But yeah, basically the idea is if you crit or if you basically get like one off from critting, you just basically like, yeah, let that roll because I don't want to keep rolling every single time, or it's just too high to matter. But yeah, you could at any point change your mind. It's just the idea
okay,
is that if you've taken the one roll, it's probably too good to re-roll it. All right, attack
right.
modifiers. Each attack mode is more effective against some defense modes than others, and vice versa. This is represented by modifiers which apply to the attacker's power score. There is a table for this. We'll kind of briefly go over it, but basically, there's an attack mode for every defense mode and vice versa, right? They have their counterparts. When an attack
There are
mode clashes with the
counterparts.
yeah, they do have direct counterparts. So when an attack mode
Gotcha.
clashes with the defense mode, cross-index the attack with the defense on table 14. The resulting modifier is applied to the attacker's power score. Thus, positive modifiers are bonuses and negative modifiers are penalties. So if I'm using the wrong defense mode, I may actually give you, the attacker, a better chance. But if I use the correct defense mode, I may worsen your chance. So all the defense modes will modify the attacker's score, not the other way around. The defender will
Is
always be static, but their defense mode choice will affect the attacker.
I don't think I've actually asked this yet, but is there any way to know what you're being attacked with?
Um, I think so. I think you do know, but that will be covered hopefully in the rest of this chapter. But I do believe you do
Okay.
know what you're being attacked with.
Okay.
Let's see. So each defense mode. Okay, so let me go over the table real quick, and then we'll get into tangents, because tangents is one of those areas that gets complicated. It doesn't come up all the time, but it gets complicated. So,
Is there
so
literally
let's
a
go.
section in there called tangents?
Yes,
That's fire. That's
perfect
fire.
for us, right? Okay, so
Of course.
attack versus defense modes. So you have, again, Mind Blank, Thought Shield, Mental Barrier, Intellect Fortress, and Tower of Iron Will, versus Mind Thrust, Ego Whip, Insinuation, Psychic Crush, and Psionic Blast. So, for instance,
Hold on.
Mind Thrust,
Psychic
Psychic Crush, and Psionic Blast. So, for instance, if
What
you,
was
as
the
the
one just
attacker,
before? Sorry.
what?
What was the one just before Psychic Crush?
Insinuation.
Is that just ID?
Yeah, ID Insinuation.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so for instance, if you were using Mind Thrust to attack a Psionicist and they use Mind Blank, you will get a +5 to your attack. That is the worst thing that they could use against Mind Thrust. However, on the opposite end, if you use Tower of Iron Will against Mind Thrust, the attacker will get a -5.
Okay.
So Mind Thrust, Mind Blank gives it a +5. Everything else gives it a negative, from a -2 up to a -5. Ego Whip, Mind Blank would give it a +5. Thought Shield gives it a 0. Everything else gives it a negative. Insinuation gets a positive with Thought Shield or Mental Barrier. Psychic Crush gets a positive with Mind Blank, and Psionic Blast gets a positive with Mind Blank and Thought Shield. And the others give it a negative. So there's definitely ones that you want against certain attacks. And considering that
Whichever
Psychic
one's
Blast,
the most positives
right,
and the
and
biggest
the one and
positives.
Psychic Blast being a science, the most it can get is a -2 if you use Power of Iron Will. So being a science, you can see how much more powerful that is. But
Is any of the defenses sciences?
no, those are all devotions.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about tangents. Tangents are a little. This is where it gets a little weird. So we're not gonna brush over this, but we're also not gonna spend too much time on it because you'll see right away. This is really only specific to when you have psychic psionicist for psionicist, and when you're really trying to get into the thick of combat. So for the most part, it's not like it's going to happen all the time, but this is when you're essentially trying to make contact with another psionicist and they're not letting you. So this is like basically what's actually happening. So tangents.
Okay.
each time an attack mode overcomes a defense mode. Or an attack mode succeeds against someone who is not using a defense mode. So every time your psychic attack succeeds, the attacker establishes a partial contact called a tangent. 3 tangents equals full contact. So essentially, when someone's stopping you, you have to hit them 3 times, kind of like a Pokemon, before you can get in.
Got it. Okay.
Thus, establishing contact with someone's mind through combat requires 3 successful attacks. In common parlance, a single tangent is often called a 1-finger contact versus a 2-finger contact and then full contact. Remember that an attack...
Go ahead. You're probably about to answer my question.
And then remember that an attack mode allows 2 attacks per round. So it is possible to establish 2 tangents per round.
That's exactly my question. Yep.
Yeah. So it doesn't draw out the combat or make it that useless. A tangent has no direct effects in and of itself. No matter which attack mode helps to establish it, it is only a foot in the door. When the door is open, i.e. when 3 tangents have succeeded, full contact is established. This contact is the same condition as achieved when the contact power is used successfully against a non-psionicist. So once you made your 3 attacks, you're in just like you would normally be in. There's no other special limitations. Once you've made it, you've made it. In other words, 3 effective attacks simply take the place of 1 successful use of contact against a psionicist. The tangents no longer apply once contact is established. That's why there's no such thing as a 3-finger contact. The point is it's 1 finger, 2 finger, full contact.
Got it.
When full contact is established, the attacker can make no more attacks against the defender that round. So, if you did 2 successful last round and you've done 1 successful this round, you don't get your second one, or you don't get your second one this round because you're already established. In the next round, you can use any telepathic power against the defender that you choose, provided he's within range and you pay the power cost, of course. So you've made contact, now you can do anything else that you wanted to do to them.
Now,
having
does
contact...
that mean they don't defend against it?
Say it again?
Does that mean they don't get to defend against it? Does that mean it just happens to them?
Well, yeah, now that you've established contact, now that you can... So his contact is to start to do other telepathic stuff. So once you've established contact, the other powers can now be activated, and then you have to go based off what those powers are. But there's no more defenses. Yeah, you don't get to defend continuously now that you've made contact.
Got it. Okay.
So having contact does not make the use of another telepathic power automatic. It only makes it possible. Still, the subject is incredibly vulnerable once contacted. His only means of protection is an overwhelming counterattack, probably a non-telepathic attack, or ejection, which is quite risky. So essentially, once you're in, he basically has to go after you physically to stop you, or he has to use a psychic ejection, which is dangerous. A contacted mind can be dominated, mind-wiped, affected by any number of other telepathic devotions, or crippled by another assault. Because again, once you've contacted, they're basically like a non-psionic mind. So if you use another psionic attack, they'll then get the infliction of those, disadvantages like, die rolls and stuff. Maintaining tangents. Maintaining tangents, 1 or 2, costs 1 PSP per round. So once you've maintained a tangent, you also have to have a maintenance cost to do that. So if you don't make a tangent within, 2 rounds, you're just going to have to keep in mind that you're going to be burning PSP to keep those up. I think that's where most people get confused, is just when you're keeping track of PSP every round and you're like, oh, wait, I have 2 tangents on him and I have 1 tangent on him. It's like, I think people just get confused on how to, know what they're doing.
Yeah.
A psionicist can maintain tangents only with 1 mind at a time. Okay, so maybe that was a bad example. He can maintain full contact with any number of minds, however. So once you've made contact, you can just keep bouncing from person to person. A tangent is broken only when, 1, the attacker voluntarily breaks it by simply announcing that he's doing so. So you could just say, I'm done. Or 2, the attacker fails to pay the maintenance cost of 1 PSP per round. Or 3, the attacker uses an attack mode against a different target. Or 4, the attacker is incapacitated.
Okay.
Other conditions, line of sight. Unless the description states otherwise, psionicists require line of sight to their target when using a psionic power. Clairsentient powers are an obvious exception, as as are many of the telepathic powers, which list power modifiers for tangents which are outside of the psionics field of vision. So, unless otherwise stated, you basically have to see it, but there are obvious exceptions. There we go. Let's see. So, touch attacks. Psionic powers with a range of touch can be used in combat, but they do require a physical attack roll in addition to a power check to succeed. So you do have to make your power check. You do have to do your power thing with your psionic, but then you also have to attack them.
So the question for me is that attack roll like? Is it like a strength-based attack roll?
It's basically do a hit roll. It's a THAC0 roll. So you would have to activate your power, and then you would have to roll to hit. So you'd have to use your THAC0 against their AC to actually hit them.
What stat am I using to roll to hit?
It'll be in the power because it's a touch attack, so it'll give you like we're about to get into the power, so it'll do all that. But basically, it's going to be a standard attack. Yeah,
standard.
It would be like an unarmed attack or something like that. And then the last part here talks about combat cards. We're not really going to go over this, but basically it's just suggesting that with this particular thing, essentially having cue cards with all of your basic information and what you need to know about your powers is really beneficial.
Yeah.
It keeps it a little bit easier to understand. So it's just, 3x5 index card, powers that you know, permanent information, initial cost, maintenance cost, prep time, area of effect. Basically what you do with, spell cards. So combat cards serve three purposes. They're references. They can help speed up the game, and they make psychic contests more equitable because you can kind of just pay attention more. But otherwise, I don't think I've never had to use the psychic card. Once you know your PSP and you know your powers, every player seems to find their own way of working on this, just like with spells, right? Every character has their own way of maintaining their spell book. Mm-hmm. This is no different. But that's pretty much it. Any questions on psychic combat?
It seems, it's hard to say. It seems pretty straightforward, but for the most part, the only thing that I would have questions on would have to do with specific powers and how they interact and what it looks like. But outside of attack modes, fighting, defense modes, which is literally just to initiate tangents so that you can get contact with somebody, and pretty much how those competitions work. So it's like if I want to attack somebody, if I don't beat them, then I don't get my tangent. But if I do beat them, I get an effect and a tangent. Mm-hmm. So that's Gucci by me. Sounds good.
I'm trying to find a quick example. I just found one. Nope, that's not a good example. I was trying to find an example because there's not a lot of ones that are touch that are also like attacks. So I'm trying to find one that's actually like.
Now, I'm assuming if you can explain that you've already made contact with somebody without making an attack roll, that can be avoided. Like, hey, this guy's giving me a handshake, and when he touches my hand, I'm going to activate this.
Yeah, that would work. So again, the idea with like the attack roll is because second edition is based on THAC0, everyone has a base THAC0, right? Everyone has just a unarmed THAC0. You have a baseline THAC0, and then everything else is modified based off the weapon you use and all your proficiencies. So if you had to touch someone, and if it was like this one, like one of the powers is called switch personality. Obviously, if you two are switching personality on purpose, no big deal. You guys are just going to do it. But if you're trying to like in combat, you're going to go touch the enemy and switch personalities. That touching them, they're not going to let you just lay hands on them, right? They don't know what you're doing. So the idea would be you still have to roll to hit their AC, right? You do. It's not an attack roll in the sense if you're rolling to punch them, but you still have to get to them. And the idea would be your base your like unarmed THAC0 against their AC.
I have a question on that front because we talk a lot about AC/THAC0 being just your armor. And in the same sense, I would say your AC and THAC0 is not just your dexterity either.
No, it's everything.
And so while armor might be great for stopping a sword from piercing you, I can definitely still touch you,
But you
right?
can't touch my
So,
skin. If you touch my armor and you are trying to touch me, you could look at it from
so
that point of
that
view.
becomes the question. Does that mean somebody who wraps themselves up and I have no visible skin, that it is impossible for someone to inflict one of these touch spells or these touch abilities?
I mean, see now, and this is where again, this is that conversation that we've had a lot, where this is that player min-maxing mentality, right? Like, how do I squeeze every last little bit out of this? Because if you need but hear me out. If you need a definitive
Right.
answer to that, right? Then we're just basically like we're splitting hairs on what does every little thing mean, because now we're taking away a core concept of the book. The book says if you need to touch, you need to make an attack roll, and I'm insinuating that as because you still need to physically make contact, and the person's going to be moving around and juking you, and you may not be able to touch their skin. I'm using that as an example, but if you're saying, well, then if it's skin that's needed, then I can wrap myself up. But then we say, well, fine, then you don't need skin contact. But then you're saying, well,
what
if my no, hold on, I got to finish my thought here.
Okay.
If you're saying that no, if you know we can't just cover my skin because it's not skin contact, then it has nothing to do with me wearing armor. Then you have to argue, well, then the AC should go down because it's not normally if AC is armor and dexterity, well, then your AC should be lowered and not take into account your armor because I can touch your armor and still do my power. So the problem when you get down into, again, the min-maxing aspect of it is you start to tear apart the fundamental rules regardless, right? It's either the armor doesn't matter and you have to change the fundamental rules of what to hit is, or the armor does matter and then you have to, well, how do I min-max that to never be under that issue, right? So in my opinion, it's the concept of I'm trying to rationalize it with, it makes more sense that the full AC accounts because armor gets in the way of the touch. But if you're going to try to go the whole route of, well, you need skin. Well, the book never says you need skin, so no, that doesn't work. And so again, it's just kind of one of those.
I hear everything you're saying, but my point in asking the question in the first place was more about what you keep talking about has nothing to do with min-maxing, bro. It's way more about raw with the rules. So there's rules as written, but there's lore that has to come with it. I'm trying to understand what the intent in here at all. Like, what are we even talking about? Is this spell something that is supposed to touch this person's skin? Is that how this works? Is that something I have to take
No, it
into
doesn't need. There is nothing in the
consideration
rules as written that
when
says
I'm
that you need to
saying
touch
thing?
skin.
Or is what I am talking about here just strictly a mechanical, hey, anytime you want to do this thing, I need you to roll, period. I don't care what you have to touch. I don't care what it means. You're just rolling because it says roll. That's my question.
Well, it isn't going to be just one or the other. It really is going to depend on the thing. Because again, if you're asking me, well, is his AC going to go down because all I have to do is touch him, and his AC should go?
That's not
Are
what
you?
I'm asking you.
Well, then what are you asking? Because that was originally what you were saying is like if the AC is taken into account both armor and dexterity, then
I'm trying to get a general idea. I used that as an example, but that wasn't my question. It was an example for the idea of what is this rule set that we just read over. What is it referring to? What are we trying to communicate?
so if the idea is that if you need to activate a power, you need to do your power check. But if the also requires touch, you don't just get to say, well, I touch the enemy. You have to be able to successfully
That
touch them.
sounds
So you
like
have an
the
attack
second
roll
one
on top
that
of
I
that.
presented, which is just roll the die.
Yes, that's the idea. Is that that is the mechanic. Is you have to roll to attack. You basically have to be able to successfully touch them. Now, granted, not every power is like that in combat. Like some of them, like lend heal, right? Lend heal is one of the powers. You're not going to roll to hit your own ally.
Yes.
But like graft weapon is touch. You're just going to touch the weapon. But for something like switch personalities, if you wanted to do something like switch personalities in combat, because you would obviously be against an enemy, I would say that in that is one of those rare, and that's the only one I found, like, because I had to flip through to find one.
I would say this
But
is
in that
exactly
particular
the
case,
same
it
as
would have to be like an attack roll
rules
because they're going to
versus
stop
inflict
from like actually having you touch them. They're going to be like juking you and moving around.
It's the same thing as inflict wounds versus heal heal wounds, right? They're
Yeah,
both touch
exactly.
spells. One does damage, one does healing, right?
Hmm.
So and I understand the intent there. I understand what's going into it there, and I'm trying to understand if second edition is bringing the same thing. Lot the part, like what's the lore behind it, like what are we understanding behind what's actually happening, right? I understand you're explaining a rule set, I understand you're just reading what's in a book, right? And but again, I'm trying to go deeper, just what we're reading in the book. I'm trying to understand, like, hey, if I'm playing this character, what am I understanding as my character going through doing these things, right? I don't want to just I mean, my intent was to go deeper and like actually figure this out. I don't want to just blow past it. Okay, roll the die. Okay, cool. I want to get to know what's happening here rather than just okay, that's what we do. So that was my intent in
Hmm.
asking the question. No, is that all it is, or is there more to it, or is there any actual lore, not like lore, but lore behind it, right? Like, is there any, what am I understanding when my character's interacting with the world around them outside of the mechanical, okay, I'm picking up a die and rolling it and seeing what it says?
Hmm.
Like that is what I'm trying to get at. And right now, it feels like it's just roll the die. Which
But I mean,
if there's
but
nothing
we
more
haven't even
to it,
gotten to a
then
point to talking about like the powers yet. I mean, this is just saying that if that specific power requires touch, you are going to have to touch them, and in order to successfully touch them, you're going to have to make a combat roll. Like you're going to have to close distance
okay,
and touch them, and kind of like a grapple, you're going to have to go after them.
no,
And that is the purpose of the attack roll. It's not just a mechanic of saying we're just going to make it more difficult. The lore is that you have to make physical contact, and in order to do that, you have to overcome their natural defense against you coming after them. So that would be the lore behind it, right? Like you have to make contact in order for that power to be effective. Whether it's like, physical contact, aura based. I mean, it depends on what the power is, right? Like where the need comes from, I guess would come from the power. But like lore factually, if you're looking at like how you're going to go about like why you need to touch somebody, the why is going to be in the power. And then the role, I think the lore of the role is just trying to overcome someone's natural instinct to like recoil away from you. Now
okay.
the
Well,
skin
then
thing and
let's
whatnot, yeah, that doesn't really
use
like.
power.
Unfortunately, there really is no distinction between like armor, clothes, and skin. Which, I mean, I could see why you would want an argument there. I could definitely see like why it would be very interesting to have conversations like that. But at the same time, I could totally understand that could get so pedantic. Like what kind of armor are they wearing? Well, how much of their skin's covered? Because it's already bad enough when you have like things like 3/4 cover, half cover, full cover. Can you imagine if that also applied to armor?
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't thinking skin until you brought that up. Like, I thought skin had nothing to do with it, which is why I was asking the question about being covered up if skin is relevant.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
don't
didn't
think skin
think
is irrelevant. I
it
was just trying to
didn't
use
give
that
you
as like
a
an explanation of
general
why
spellcasting
AC
has
would be
nothing to do
also
with actually
applied.
touching skin. It just has to do with making contact with the person, which is why I didn't think armor would protect you from something like this. But you made it sound like armor is going to protect you from something like this, and I have to touch your skin.
No,
That's
and the
where
thing
I
is
got
again, that's just trying to explain why why you wouldn't want to have to like alter, because again, if armor doesn't matter, you could make the argument, well then why is my AC why is their
I
AC at
wouldn't say it
full?
doesn't matter. It would matter differently, and again,
Exactly.
we talk
Yeah.
about all that good stuff, about a lot of different things. But if it's not relevant here for you as much, then I get that. That's
I find it more relevant when it comes to like the powers, kind of like what we've talked about before in game two, where it's like there might be something that for all intents and purposes we follow rules as written, like we follow what the book says, but there's plenty of times where we've both either brought something up where it's like, hey, this is what the rule says, but looking at the situation, it doesn't make sense, right? It's just not what we would intuitively think would happen here. So I think that's also kind of the situation of, I think it would also come down to just the individual context, right? Like there's probably so many situations where we could make like different terminations of, because like second edition again, right? Like AC, for instance, is both what your armor brings to the table, and then it adds in things like your dex, your dex, your level, other magical modifiers. Like there's multiple things that add up to it. So there could be, in certain context, you could say, well, hey, can I lower their AC target because technically this part of their armor doesn't apply? That could actually, there could be arguments there totally.
Situations like when there's heavy armor and you have disadvantage on stealth checks, or when you're behind cover and those things adjust your AC. And that's all I was bringing up, is I understand that there are elements where your armor has an effect on what your AC looks like differently in different situations. And I was bringing that up as a possibility in this particular scenario. If again you believe that it is not relevant enough, like again, you can get pedantic with things, sure, but not everything is pedantic. That's a determination each individual has to make for themselves. Is like, what do I consider too detailed? What do I consider irrelevant to talk about? What do I consider, oh, that's not something that I want to focus on? Some people love worrying about travel. Some people say, guess what? We leave and we're there. We don't want to deal with the in-between stuff. We want to deal with the stuff at the end. So for them, dealing with travel is pedantic, and that's fine, but it just, what does work for you and what doesn't work for you? That's really the only question that I was going for.
All right, cool. So where are we now? So I think, so that is everything in psychic combat. So the only thing we have left now are basically all of the psychic powers. Man, this took longer than, that one chapter took longer than I expected.
Right.
Well, we've already gone through two of these actually, because we've gone over. So there's Clairsentience, which we haven't gone over, and this one we can go over pretty quickly because a lot of these are. Yeah, that's like scene, like sensory stuff. So psychokinesis,
right.
We'll need to do that one as well. But didn't we go over? I thought we went over two of these in the first episode. Psychometabolism.
Remember talking about all of them in the first one. I don't know if we specifically went over powers in each one. I know we definitely talked about powers and psychometabolism because that's a lot of Alo's powers. I could have sworn we didn't talk about psychoportation powers.
We did talk about metapsionics. I think we talked about metapsionics, and because that was in our episode of actual talking about that. So yeah, I think we just went over that one. So we'll see how far we get. I mean, we're already 2 hours in, but I mean, these are just talking about the power. So at this point, this is like really where the juice is, right? Like this is where you're really starting to.
Are you talking about going back into the disciplines or just going over the powers?
Just kind of everything. Like we're just going to kind of go over, because like this just basically starts with each discipline and then all of the powers underneath it. So we'll just kind of, again, we're just summarize what we can, and then just kind of go from there. So it all starts with clairsentience, right? Clairsentience is all about like extrasensory perception, right? Let's see. So this is okay, cool. So clairsentience. So we have again sciences, which we'll go over first. These are the major powers, and then we'll go over the divinations, which are the lower powers. Some of these I'll read through. Some of these I will just kind of summarize because they're kind of self-explanatory. But let's start. First one is aura sight. Now I will go over this first one in how it's laid out, and then the rest of them we're just going to kind of skip unless I see anything specific.
But aura sciences, right?
Yeah, science is always first. So an aura sight is a science. Power score of wisdom -5. Just to kind of, again, I'm only going to go over this on this one, and then we'll just go over other ones as I see like things to point out. Initial cost 9 PSP. Maintenance cost 9 PSP per round.
That's hefty. Okay.
Range is 50 yards. Preparation time is 0. And I believe, I don't know if this, I believe, let me double check, but preparation time, I believe, is not rounds, but segments. I believe the preparation time is actually segments within a round. But let me double check on that. Let me verify, because I don't remember actually going over that. That's the psionic primer.
I remember them briefly talking about it, but
PS.
we didn't actually go over the rules on it. One thing they said was some things will take multiples, and that's when you can get interrupted. If you do get interrupted, then it doesn't use any of your PSP, but you do waste the time or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Is that yeah? It's mainly you'll waste the time, but not the PSP if you're interrupted during those things. Like if you get basically attacked. Using
But
powers. Second contest.
I mean, maybe finding one with that does have a preparation time will give us an idea of what kind of unit of measure it uses.
Oh, here we go. Preparation time. Oh no, it is round. Preparation time is rounds. So after one round of preparation, in round number 2, he can make a power check. Okay, so yeah, so if it's 1, it'll send a full round preparing. He can't initiate another power during that round, but he can still maintain them. After 1 round of preparation, in round number 2, he can make a power check. If that power check fails, the player can try to use the power again in round 3. The power that has been prepared can be held ready for just 1 round if it isn't used after that preparation time. Okay, so so the preparation time is rounds. But you can technically, so like let's say something has a preparation time of 2 rounds, you can spend 2 rounds to initiate it, and then at the beginning of the 3rd round is when you'll be able to like utilize it. But you can also hold it for 1 additional round or lose it. So you basically can delay it 1 additional round once it's prepared. So that's what preparation time is.
If you get it prepared and then you don't set it off for whatever reason, do you lose the PSP?
A power that has been prepared can be held ready for just 1 round. If it isn't used after that, preparation time is wasted, no PSP cost.
Okay.
So the preparation time is kind of like, I'm going to spend 2 rounds prepared. I can either activate it that same round when it's prepared or wait 1 more round, and then you'll burn that preparation time. Like you can't, you'll have to if you redo the power, you don't get to say, well, I've already prepared it. You have to redo the preparation. Okay, and then let's see. Area of effect is personal, and the prerequisite is none. So some of these powers will have a prerequisite, like any telepathic power will have the prerequisite of contact. So you have to establish contact first before you can establish this one. This one has no prerequisite, meaning it can be the first thing you cast. All right, so this one, the aura is a glowing halo or envelope of colored light that surrounds all living things and is invisible to the naked eye, but it reflects both the creature's alignment and experience level. So when you use the power, you can interpret the aura, which does require some concentration. With each use of the power, you can learn only 1 piece of information, either the subject's alignment or their experience level, but not both simultaneously.
It's really
you can
only
examine.
good to use twice on 1 person.
Yeah, they can use. You can use up to 2 auras per round, so you can examine up to 2 auras per round. You must be able to see both subjects. Remember, you're basically casting it on yourself, and the range is 50 yards. So once you cast it, anybody within 50 yards you can look at. So it's not against a target. It's just you activate it, and you have this aura sight. You can look at up to 2 different auras per round. So yeah, you basically this is just eyes. You basically like goggles. In any case, you can make a new power check each time you attempt to interpret an aura, so up to 2 per round. You can be reasonably discreet when using the power. You don't have to poke at the subject or give them any, stink eye or anything. You can basically just glance over.
Right.
And the range is basically powered by your vision, so you can go unnoticed by maintaining at a distance because you have up to 50 feet. If you do try to sense auras on people that you're conversating with, they certainly will notice that you're staring, and they'll probably get a little uncomfortable. So if you're right up face to face, it's kind of obvious, but if you're far away, no one's going to notice a thing. And the level of the character being analyzed affects the psionics power check. So the higher the subject's experience level, the tougher to interpret the subject's aura. This translates to a -1 penalty for every 3 levels of the subject's experience rounded down. So for example, if you're reading an 8th level character, you suffer a -2 penalty to this power. Or to your power check when you read it, right? You activate it, and then you make a power check to read someone's aura. So you'll get a negative on not the initiation, but the actual reading. And if the die roll for the power check is a 1, the psionicist reading is incomplete or slightly incorrect. For example, they may learn only that there's a chaotic portion of a chaotic neutral alignment.
Got it.
Or they may interpret the character's level with an error in 1 or 2 levels. So you may be off slightly. Your power score, if you hit your power score... Oh, go ahead.
When you learn the levels, do you learn anything about their like class or anything like that, or like what they have a class, like what they have levels in, or is it just their overall player level?
Just their overall level.
Okay.
And then if you hit your power score, so critical success, the Psionicist can examine up to 4 auras per round instead of 2. And if you crit fail, the Initiator can't use the power again for 24 hours.
Rude. All right.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, so that's basically, again, this is what's Clairsentience is going to be all about. It's, perceptions, right? Clairaudience, this one's pretty good. The range is, I'm going to point out again things that I find unique. Wisdom -3, initial cost of 6, maintenance cost of 4. Range is unlimited.
Okay.
Clairaudience allows the user to hear sounds from a distance. They can pick a spot anywhere within range. The range is unlimited. He can then hear anything that he would be able to hear normally if he were standing in that spot. If they enhance the senses apply to... If they have enhanced senses, there's another ability that can enhance your senses. This will also apply to this power. So if you've already enhanced your ability to hear... So again, basically, if you say, I want to be like I'm standing over there, all you will get from this power is as if you're standing there. But that still won't help you with a whisper. Unless you also have enhanced, and then you can hear a whisper as if it were clear as day. Right? So both of those would stack. Because the Clairaudience power essentially acts as if you're standing there. So it gives you the essence that you're standing there, but then if you used enhanced senses, you'd also get the enhanced ability as if you were standing there.
So it's not meant to be specific enough to like, I can do it as if I were standing right in between you. Like if you're whispering into somebody's ear, I could be standing in between that point.
You could, but again, you could, but that may not be the situation you need, right? Maybe you need to be in a room and then you need to hear something elsewhere. Like the idea is that, yes, it's just the idea that you can also have a stacked ability of enhanced senses if you needed it.
Okay.
The farther the listening spot is from the Psionicist, the more difficult it is to use the power. The table below has modifiers. So 100 yards, 0 modifier, 1,000 yards, -2, 10 miles is a -4, 100 miles is a -6, 1,000 is a -8, 10,000 is a -10, and interplanetary is a -12. Players with the Spelljammer box set should note that the Clairaudience only works within a given crystal sphere or plane.
Interesting.
So no listening outside of High Point. You were stuck to listen inside of High Point.
Question is, so I can't listen in on phase. Dang it. The question becomes, oh, where did it go? Where did it go? Did it say what the maintenance cost for this is?
4 per round.
4 per round. Okay. So if I put all my points into this, I could potentially get it past 20, the point where even if I had a -12, my score was still 20.
Oh, basically, yeah. Technically, you could put it to where, like, yeah, the -20, the -12 would only account unless you crit failed. Like, basically, you'd only have a 5% chance of not pulling this off. But you would basically always be able to pull it off, yes. And remember, again, it only basically puts your ear in that location, right? You choose a spot, and it's as if you were standing there. So remember, it's not like you're picking audio and then being able to, like, enhance it. You can only say, I want to stand there and get whatever I could hear. There is a little bit more to the power.
Do I have to have been there? Does it say that?
Nope, it just says picks a spot anywhere within range. So, using Clairaudience does not screen out background noise around the Psionicist. So if someone in their own neighborhood is raising a racket, you may have trouble hearing what's happening elsewhere. So you hear what's both visible or audible where you're standing with the power, but also where you're physically standing. So you will still also hear your physical body. Clairaudience does not give the psionicist the ability to understand a foreign or alien language, nor does it help him interpret sounds. For example, if the psionicist hears furniture scraping across the floor, he can only guess whether it's a chair or something else, just as if he heard it while blindfolded. So remember, you're not there, you just hear as if you were standing there. So that's where the enhanced, like if you had enhanced senses and can control it better, that's where that would be even more beneficial. And then if you make your power score, so crit success, then you will automatically gains clairvoyance of the area as well. And that's sight.
Visual?
Yeah. So by critting on this, you automatically basically just like go there. And if you crit fail, you are deaf for 1d12 hours.
True.
I like these though, right? Like these feel like good crit fails. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like these don't feel just like the regular, oh, you just take a negative like a bullshit penalty. Like being deaf for 12 hours makes fucking sense. And especially that's why, that negative 12, like that fucking would suck if you like, but that's only on a crit fail. You only go deaf on a crit fail, right? Okay, so clairvoyance, just what we said before, same exact thing. It's a wisdom negative 12, a wisdom negative 4, initial cost of 7, maintenance cost of 4. But it does not have a range. It has an unlimited range. This basically lets you see images from a distant area. So you pick a viewing spot from anywhere within range. You can see anything that you would normally be able to see is standing in that spot. Your field of vision is no wider than usual, and you can scan the area by turning your head. So also you're not able to walk around. So remember, if you're in a spot, it's not like you'd be able to navigate. Every time you wanted to move, even if it was 5 feet, you have to recast the power. Because you can put yourself anywhere you want, but you have to activate the power to put yourself there. Then you're stationary. You are standing there, listening or visiting.
To move, but 4 points to keep it there.
Yeah. So every time you wanted to move, if you were in the wrong spot and you could see you were in the wrong spot, you could reactivate the point or reactivate the power and move. But you wouldn't be able to just walk around, right? You could turn around. That's all you could do is you could do a 360, but you can't actually like break into a place or learn of, something, right? And kind of going back to your point, I wouldn't say that you have to have been there, but you have to know the place exists. And you would also have to have an understanding. Like, I don't want to say that you'd have to be there, but you can't just say, oh, the Emperor has a vault. I'm in the Emperor's vault. Like, you can't do that, right? You can't just be like, oh, I'm in my enemy's bedroom. You know what I mean? Like, you couldn't just think of a concept of a location and be there. You couldn't just say, I want to be in front of my god. Like, that doesn't work. You have to be like, oh, I know where my enemy lives. I know what town he's in. Okay, I want to be there, right? Like, I feel like there's a limitation to the point of you can't just tell the universe the idea of what you want and it tells you to go there. I think the idea would have to be you have to at least have some idea or conceptual knowledge of the location and where it is. You couldn't just, again, the magic doesn't know, right? The power doesn't know any better. It's not like it has magical knowledge. So if you know someone has a vault, you can't just see the vault. But if you knew it was under their place and you knew roughly it was over there underground, you could pop yourself underground in that general vicinity and get an idea. But I wouldn't say that you just are in there.
Here's a scenario. I got Google Maps, so I can find the pyramids, right? And I go look inside the pyramids if I can find out where they're at roughly geographically.
See, okay, that in that particular case, maybe, but it would also have to be that concept of like you would, okay, you could see a picture of the pyramids and maybe that wouldn't be enough to get you nearby, but you don't have any conceptual knowledge of what's inside the pyramids. So it'd basically still be blind checking, right? You'd just be like, the west side, oh, I'm in a rock. All right, the east side, oh, I'm in a rock. Okay, the north side, oh, I'm in a cave. Like, I could see it being more like that, where if you don't know exactly where you're going, you are shooting in the dark, right? Like, I could say I want to be a mile underground, but I don't know if the vault is 10 feet that way. I don't know if it's 110 feet underground. It's more of the, you can go wherever you want unlimitedly, but you have to know where you're going. The magic doesn't know better for you.
What would you say if somebody was, by their own rights, confident that inside of a certain cave, or inside of like a mountainside, there was like a cave, right? And so they were like, I want to look inside that cave. but somehow it caved in, it's not there anymore, whatever the case may be. Would you say the power fails, or they see blackness from being inside, from like viewing
So
inside
this
of a
is
solid object?
this is actually a really good question in terms of like how to run Psionis as a DM, right? Because you could there's two different mindsets there, right? You could state that if you can't cast the power successfully, like if you couldn't otherwise occupy the space, you could straight up say it doesn't activate the power and it fizzles and you don't use the PSP. That's okay. I don't see why you couldn't. But in my opinion, it doesn't say that you have to be able to occupy the space. It only says as if you did. So if you wanted to go and say, hey, I think that there's a cave inside that mountain, and I say it's about a mile deep, boom, take me there, and there's no cave, it's black. It's silent. You might hear some dripping water. But if there is a cave, it's probably black and silent, and you'll probably see some water. The reality is you can't feel. If you were inside of a cave, how do you know that? How can you distinguish that from inside of a rock? And that would be the fun thing to tell a character is, yeah, you go inside. It is pitch black and you can't hear anything. Is it a cave or is it a rock? You don't technically know because you can't move and you can't interact with anything. And that's only if you have both powers active at once. If you only had one power, one at a time.
Imagine if you wanted to look inside of the king's vault. It's going to be pitch black in there unless there's some
Most likely
light source.
And that's the thing. That's the thing about this is like, I don't want to get like, I wouldn't want to be like too pedantic as a DM, but realistically, I think that it makes the most sense that the power doesn't know any better. So the power would have to, you have to direct it somehow, right? You have to have at least some, you don't have to have been there. You don't have to have only memories because I think that would kind of, the whole unlimited range would kind of make like this kind of shitty if you couldn't do that. But at the same time, you still have to have some idea. Like saying I want to be on another planet isn't good enough. But knowing that the planet exists, right, I think is enough to push it, right? Like I think there has to be some sort of concept that you can't just think of an idea of a place. You actually have to think of a place.
You like get a telescope and you can see Jupiter and you're like, hey, that spot right there on Jupiter. I want my eyes to be looking right there.
So good question. I think it really does come down to the DM though, and how you think this interprets, right? So going to the spots, field of vision's no wider than normal. You can scan by turning your head. Here we go. Clairvoyance does not replace the character's normal eyesight. Psionis can see what is actually before him, but the distance seen is superimposed. For this reason, most clairvoyants close their eyes to avoid the confusion of images. So you never stop seeing what your eyes see. You just get a kind of like when they do the two screens on something. So yeah, you basically have to close your eyes in order to see what you're seeing. Otherwise, you basically see double.
When you close your eyes, it's like your eyes are open, just in the other place.
Hang on one second.
Yep, no worries.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Yep, my shit. my ear died.
But does that mean that if I close my eyes, that what I'm seeing is as if my eyes were open, just in a different location?
Yeah, basically. You're basically just getting two superimposed images, so closing your eyes will help you not see double. That's basically the idea.
So that's an incredibly strange sensation, to close your eyes, not have your eyes be closed.
Yeah. Well, and also imagine like if you've ever done the thing where like if you see like, if you put something up on your eye, but you try to open both eyes, so you like see, like if you do this, I can see my hand, but I can also see behind my hand. Right? So it's like that whole thing of like, if I close both eyes, you see the hand become prominent and then not, but it's like, there's a certain point where you're like, or have you ever done the thing where, you look through like the tube and then you can make like the hole in your hand, happen because like the way that your eyes are looking through the tube and it looks like your hand's having like a hole like this, like I could like put a hole in my hand. It's basically like that, right? You're basically being messed up by not being able to properly have depth perception. So yeah, that would be, again, I love these things. I love how they built this out to really like paint the picture so the DM didn't have to think too hard about what these things mean. And then the more distant the viewed area is, the more difficult it is to use clairvoyance. Basically, it's the same process as clairaudience. It's the same modifiers. Same thing with Spelljammers as well. You have to be within the same crystal sphere. Clairvoyance does nothing to enhance the character's vision. Unless some other power or magic is at work, he still cannot see objects that are invisible, hidden, shadows behind other objects. Power also provides no sound, so the character actually sees a kind of silent movie, without subtitles, of course. Once the viewing spot is chosen, it is fixed in space. To enjoy the view from another location, the Psionicist must use the power another time to make the new power and make a new power check, which is funny because it didn't say that in clairaudience, but I interpret that as it's one and the same, right? It's just to save space. They didn't double down on that. The Psionicist's clairvoyant presence is undetectable by normal means. It cannot be dispelled, repelled, or kept away by any form of magic, because it is not magic. So it's kind of like basically astral projection. You are there, but no one knows it. It's the best way you can scry. That's usually how I use that for NPCs is scrying. Power score. So if you crit, succeed, the Psionicist automatically gains clairaudience too. So basically both of those will always go hand in hand if you have them. And the cool thing is this doesn't say that you have to know the other one in order to get it. So if you only know one of these and crit succeed, you still get the other one.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, there's no prerequisite that says if you own it. You just automatically get one and the other. So one of those little things I like about how they thought about that too. And then if you crit fail, you're blind for 1d4 hours. Better than being deaf for 1d12. I mean, 1d4 is not nearly as bad as 1d12.
That's very true.
Hisbor, what up? How you doing? We are going through the powers of Psionicis now, finally. We are on clairvoyance, or clairsentience, actually. All right, so object reading. This one's interesting. Initial cost is 16 with no maintenance cost. So this one has no maintenance, one and done. But it is area effective touch, and it does take 1 round to prepare. So object reading is the ability to detect psionic impressions or psychic impressions left on an object by its previous owner, including race, sex, age, and alignment. So it's kind of like the aura reading, but past, right? The power can also reveal how the owner came to possess the item, as well as how he lost it. The amount of information gained depends on a power check, and if the Psionicist power check is successful, he learns information listed as the table below. So if you get a 1 or a 2 on your power check, you get the owner's race. A 3, you get the sex. 4, you get age. 5, you get alignment. 6 or a 7, you get to how the last owner gained and lost the item. And an 8+, you get all of the information about all owners. Not just the last owner, all owners.
Imagine being like a detective, and this is like your primary stat, and you're just
Pokeniner, what is up?
Well, people are coming, like, bringing you all different types of stuff, helping you like find lost people or something like that.
Like this would be like the best way to be like a private eye or something. Just be like, hey, hand me that. They're at your mother's house. Go home. It'd just be so stupid to just be able to do that. You do that. You figure out where they lost it, and then you go clairaudience over to that area or clairvoyance over to that area, and then you just see them, and you're like, oh yeah, they're over here. All right. So an object can be read only once per experience level of the Psionicist, so that you can't just sit there and like rack up a bunch of options. So kind of like, also how they used to do rogues with only being able to do 1 lock per level, or, if you failed a lockpick. Additional readings at that level reveal no additional information. So no matter how many times you cast it, you just won't get anything during that level. When the clairvoyant gains a new experience level, you could try to read the same object again, even if the object reading score has not changed. Excuse me. If you crit success, you will automatically learn all information on the table above. Which is funny because that's the same thing as if you get an 8 or more, you get all this information about all owners, and then if you get a crit, you basically get the same exact thing. So that one's kind of one of those that doesn't really give you anything else. But if you crit fail, yeah, but if you crit fail, the Psionicist becomes obsessed with the object. He strives to keep it until he can attempt to read it again. So it's lightweight, a curse until the next level. Say that again?
Okay, yeah. I was just confirming that he gets the opportunity at his next level.
Yeah, but basically lightweight, it's like he's cursed and he's like he has to sit there and wait for it. But yeah, so
That's crazy.
I like this power, precognition. It is initial cost of 24, but no maintenance cost, and it takes 5 rounds to prepare.
Okay.
Precognition enables the Psionicist to foresee the probable outcome of a course of action. This foresight is limited to the near future, no more than several hours ahead. You must describe the intended course of action in some detail in order to establish the course of events. The DM makes a power check secretly. If the check fails, the character gains no information. If the roll is 20 exactly, or the character sees himself meeting his own death in a particularly nasty and grisly way and must make a saving throw versus petrification. If they fail the save, he is so completely shaken up by the vision that all his psionic power scores are reduced by 3 for 1d6 hours.
Rip.
Yeah, it's
Rip.
like it's devastating. But that's the crit fail. That's like a crit fail. If the power succeeds, the character sees the most likely outcome of the actions described. The DM has some liberty in describing the scene and should use the D20 roll as a guide on how much detail is included. High rolls get more details. Even when it's successful, precognition offers no guarantees. Psionicists only see one possible out of many outcomes. If the characters involved deviate from the actions they described, they are changing the conditions of the timeline, thereby making the outcome more or less likely. Die rolls, particularly for surprise, initiative, and normal combat, also play a large part in precognition's inaccuracy. The DM cannot be expected to engineer die rolls to the player's advantage, and even events with 95% certainty fail to occur 5% of the time. Anyone who relies on precognition to the exclusion of caution and common sense is asking for trouble. So basically, you may say as a DM, yes, this is very likely to succeed, or no, this is very unlikely to succeed, but you can't say, oh, yeah, you'll succeed on this, and then they go, and then they all crits fail, and all of the enemies crit succeed, right? Like, you can't stop that, and you won't stop that as a DM. But just because it was the most likely does not mean it's the most... Yeah, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And precognition is tiring. Regardless of the outcome, the Psionicists who use this power must rest for at least 1 turn before they can use any other clairsentient power.
Oh, wow.
And the use of other disciplines is not affected. But basically, you use this, you ain't using anything else in this discipline, which I like. I like that that level of restriction.
Okay.
The Psionicist, if you crit succeed, the Psionicist player may re-roll 3 die rolls to maintain the precognition's validity. Wow.
Oh, so they basically get to now. Is that their own die rolls or period?
So...
Because that's
so to maintain the precognition's validity. So like we said, the DM can't predict or modify what may happen. But if at any point during the process, regardless of the process, you get a power score of this, at any point, if there's a die roll that would alter the outcome, the Psionicist could be like, hey, re-roll that. Like if you say, hey, how likely is it that if we do this, we kill the BBEG, and the DM says, that's pretty likely if you follow those things, and then the BBEG crits and is about at TPK, the Psionicist could be like, hey, re-roll that. Because they want to keep what was guaranteed in the precognition.
What roles is that limited to? Is that limited to the Psionicist roles, or is that any role that has anything to do with that outcome?
Says the Psionicist player may re-roll 3 die rolls to maintain the precognition's validity. So basically the idea is that you can use those on any roll as long as you and the DM agree that that roll's outcome directly it basically directly goes against the precognition, right? So if that roll would, hinder what you thought was success, you can make it re-roll, just to make sure that you continue the precognition's validity. Now remember, if you say that, if the validity says that you are likely to succeed in a fight, you can re-roll a crit that would hurt you, right? Makes perfect sense. If the precognition said the fight was most likely to lose, if the precognition said you were most likely to lose, and the BBEG crits on you, I read this as you don't get to re-roll that, because that's undoing the validity. It says you have to maintain. So if you say, hey, if I go after the BBEG and cast this spell after this spell in that order, will we win? And the precognition says no, you won't. That's very unlikely. And you go into that fight, you can't re-roll anything that would help you fight that win, right? You can't. You have to only re-roll things. Now, you don't have to re-roll things that are beneficial to you, but you can't re-roll things that would yeah, that's fascinating. That is nice that you can't just re-roll anything you want. It has to go towards what you know to be true. These are the sciences the psionic can use, right? They're basically spells. Yeah, so these are the sciences which are the higher level powers, only within the clairsentient category right now in that discipline. But yeah, these are the higher level end powers that you can get. But yeah, and then if you crit fail, see above, not an optional result. Oh, that was if you crit fail, the DM basically tells you you're going to die horribly and you get afraid.
That's right.
Okay, so that one was a great one. Here we go. Another science. Sensitivity to psychic impressions. This does have a maintenance cost. It's 12 to initiate, 2 per round. Area of effect is 20 yards. So this power, you gain the sense of history. You can perceive the residue of powerful emotions that were experienced in a given area. And basically gives you like a picture of the place's past. So battles, betrayals, marriages, murders, childbirths, great pain, only events which elicit strong emotional or psychic energies leave an impression. Everyday occurrences don't leave anything. So determine how far into the past you can dive. Divide the result of your power score by 2 and round up. That's the cap of how far back you can go. This is the number of strong events which can be sensed. Only one event can be noted per round. However, beginning with the most recent and proceeding backwards through time. So, you can get, depending upon, like how many events you can get, you can go pretty far back in time. The character's understanding of these events is vague and shadowy, as if he were viewing a dream. The dominant emotion involved, anger, hate, fear, love, etc., can come through very clearly. So again, kind of like you were saying, cool for a detective, but only in very intense situations. If you crit succeed, you gain an unusually clear understanding of the event. And if you crit fail, an angry ghost comes forward and attempts to use magic jar against the psionicist.
That's crazy.
Hang on a second.
I wonder if jar is in 2nd edition.
It is, and it's not in this book, so we'd have to look up what magic jar is. I think that's basically just like something that traps you.
It traps your soul, not just you. That's part of what people want to use to build their phylactery is magic jars, so they can like steal into it. So
so they basically just going to try to come after you and your soul.
Yeah.
All right, so those were the sciences. So we had so this one has a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sciences. So again, not very much. Yeah, magic jar is dangerous, especially when a ghost comes after you. Okay, so those were all of the sciences. Those were the major powers for clairsentience. These are going to be the devotions. So these are the minor powers. Bro, fucking love this goddamn class. I fucking love this goddamn. Just always reminding me of shit that you can do. All right, clairsentience, first devotion, all around vision. Initial cost of 6, maintenance cost of 4. This power gives the psionicist eyes on the back of his head and inside and on top and of course and everywhere. Of course, it's figurative. You don't actually have the eyeballs, but it's the idea. So in effect, the character can see in all directions simultaneously. Besides its obvious application when combined with clairvoyance, because it fucking stacks, So imagine that. You go to a location with clairvoyance, and then you activate this, which means you see in all directions all at once at that location. All-around vision prevents anyone from sneaking up on the character without some sort of a concealment. On the other downside, the Psionicist suffers a -4 penalty against all gaze attacks while using this power, because you can't look away. You don't have eyes to close. If you crit succeed, infrared or infravision is also gained, which is infrared vision, so you can see body heat. And if you crit fail, you're blind for 1d4 hours.
Rude, but makes sense.
But yeah, all around vision is fucking amazing, dude. Like, all around vision can be fucking nasty. Combat mind. A character using this power has an unusually keen understanding of his enemies and their fighting tactics. As a result, you basically get a -1 bonus when making as a result, the Psionicist's side in combat gets a -1 bonus when making initiative die rolls. This is cumulative with any other modifiers, so that's a good thing. So in second edition, you're using initiative as a 1d10 because there are 10 segments per round. And so this gives everybody on your side a -1, so putting you at first of initiative because you start at 1 and go up to 10. So this is basically saying if you were a 5, now you're 4, which means you're 1 more closer in initiative, so you go sooner. So that's kind of cool. Everyone on your team, you basically just give your entire ally team combat advantage. Hisbor says, you'll love to hear the new class you've been working on. It's kind of also sorry about working on basically the non-combatant class. It's all about rituals on the other side. So making episodes. Hey, that is totally fine. I do not mind non-combative stuff. Like, we want to look at everything, so don't you worry. But yeah, we
were talking about, or was that?
Say it again.
I'm thinking of something. Is that because I'm pretty confident there was a class that I was talking with somebody about where there was a deck of cards in it, and I thought that was you, Hisbor.
Oh yeah, the one that has all the pictures and everything. Yeah, like the class that's like the deck of many classes almost.
Yeah, lightweight.
The class. No, it should be called the class of many things. How about that instead of the deck of many things? The class of many things. Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to reading that one.
I think he was talking about rituals in that one as well. So I think it might be the same thing.
Yeah, don't apologize. That's exactly what the Discord is for, is to share those ideas before they get up on stream, or if you don't want them on stream, just to chit chat about them. So don't apologize for talking about your stuff, man. We love it. Keep it coming. I'm so excited that we have so much on Homebrew Review. We have, oh my god, we have so much. Okay, so that was Combat Mind. So I really do like that. That is the first one we've seen too that actually affects other players on your party. That's actually the first one that actually affects everybody, not just you.
Right.
Danger Sense is the next one. When using this one, a Psionicist will experience a slight tingle sensation at the back of his neck when a hazard or threat is nearby. Yes, it is Spidey Sense. You become Spider-Man. The DM must make a successful power check on the Psionicist's behalf before the character detects the danger. So this is very akin to a lot of second edition. This harkens back to a lot of the old days. If you guys aren't familiar and why this sounds a little bit weird, back in the day, the DM did most of the rolling. In AD&D first edition and in second edition, most of the rolls were done by the DM, and they told you what you were able to pull off. It is a rule that I do not do. I like having the I personally really love rolling my die. I just like to fall into the trap that I can somehow control it. I do love that mindset. I do love just feeling like if I don't roll something, it's on me versus just being told yes or no. There's just something about the control of it. So I'm not a big fan when second edition throws that out there that, this is for the DM to roll. But if you're wondering why it seems like it references that a lot, that is just a second edition mechanic that the DM was primarily the roller of a lot of the die rolls. This power does not give the Psionicist any specific information about the incoming danger. He does not learn how or when it will strike. However, they do learn the general direction of the threat: right, left, ahead, behind.
So I understand maybe not the exact moment, but I would assume that this would go off as it's approaching, right? So I would assume that this is an imminent danger, like the Spidey sense, like it's coming at you right now type deal.
But it could also be like, let's say you guys are traveling in a forest and there's an upcoming, like, that would make sense if someone's about to like shoot or starting to aim an arrow, or maybe they let an arrow fly. That in what you're describing, yes, that's one instance of it. But let's say you're walking around and there's an ambush ahead, and they haven't sprung anything, no one's aiming at you, but there is an ambush that you were walking towards. You may just get the sense that danger is ahead somewhere. Versus you may have someone sneaking up on you and about to stab you in the back. You may also get a danger sense right before they stab you. Because what if you're in a crowd and someone hasn't decided that you're a target yet? Maybe you don't get the danger sense until they pull the dagger. Versus an ambush that's been waiting there for an hour has that sense that you could probably... So I would assume that it is a danger sense of priority. Depends on when the player casts it and when the DM believes... Because it is an area of effect of 10 yards. So you got to keep in mind that it has to be an imminent threat within 10 yards. So if it is absolutely imminent, like it's just about to happen, like someone, is about to stab you, then it would be instantaneous. Whereas if it's something in the area that could harm you soon, like a snake, what if it's just a coiled up snake that you're about to walk in on? That danger sense could alert you within 10 yards of it. So it's not about to hurt you. But hey, maybe we should walk slowly as we move forward.
Oh, out of curiosity, what's the maintenance cost on this?
So it is a 4 to initiate and 3 per turn. So there is more that we can. So there's a little bit more that we can read. So
I'm kind of playing back and forth the different ways that I can put things together and play.
So let's figure out. So the character's power check results determines how much warning he gets. If the roll is 12 or more, he knows whether danger is lurking anywhere in the immediate area. If it's 8 or more, he enjoys a full round of warning before the danger strikes. If it's 7 or less, however, the Psionicist isn't alerted until moments before danger strikes. If the roll is 1 exactly, he still has several moments warning but the direction's off. If the attack is coming from the left, he thinks it's coming from ahead, behind, or to the right. DM's option. If the Psionicist and his companions have enough warning, they can do something to prepare, getting into defensive positions, preparing spells, running away, for example. If they have less than 1 round of warning, the DM must decide how much preparation is possible. In any case, they will always gain a +2 bonus to their own surprise rolls. So essentially, It's harder to surprise the whole party. So again, it benefits the whole party, but it kind of goes into, again, I love that it's taking, and again, the more we talk about these, the more I see how much this influenced the way that I do like ability checks, right? The fact that this is talking about how it has that step down process, right? Like if it's 12 or higher, 8 or higher, 7 or higher. That's basically how I will run things, right? I'll make those decisions on the fly of, hey, these are the numbers I want you to hit for, different effects. Right. So I see where I was influenced so much by this class. And then if you crit success, the Psionicist learns how far away the danger is. So you know exactly how far away it is. And if you crit fail, you cannot sense danger successfully for 1d6 hours.
So that means, I'm guessing it stops this power. Oh wait, yeah, because you failed.
Yeah. Hisbor. So don't worry about missing the first part. We also we covered it a little bit in the first part. We also covered it in the last stream. But yeah, so basically the power score. So the power score is the score that the Psionicist needs to hit in order to activate it. It's kind of like a proficiency or an ability score. It's just what you have to do in order to activate your power. So for instance, in Danger Sense, Wisdom -3, which means the Psionicist would take his Wisdom score. So let's say it's a 15. He would apply that negative modifier. So if he has a 15, he would do a Wisdom -3, so it would be a 12. And then he would have to roll a 12 or under in order to successfully pull off the power. That's how power score works. It's basically your stat with the modifier, and then that's that number or less is what you want to roll. And then, yeah, don't worry about questions like that. Just let me know if you have any others, because we want to keep you guys little updates like that. I don't mind. We're just not going to do, obviously, everything. But if you have little questions like that, don't care. But, yeah, so Danger Sense is kind of cool, kind of like Spider-Man. Like I said, early levels, it seems like a lot of these things are like, I don't know if I'd burn the PSP. But later down the road, when you got a couple hundred to burn, shit like this is awesome. You're just like a fucking Spider-Man. Yeah. So yeah, it's a complete opposite. Yeah, second edition. So second edition standard scoring was whenever that you had like any kind of ability score. Standard second edition was you had to roll under that score to succeed. That was just standard second edition. My DM, the one that I learned from, he had a kind of a house rule where the further away from the number, so like let's say you had an ability score of 15, the further away you were, the better it was. Because what we used to call that was beating it by a lot, because the second edition rule set was you have to beat it or go under. So, a 2 out of 15 was better than a 10 out of 15. Whereas in my setting, I have reasons for it, but basically I do the aspect of I still do under, but I do close without going over. So for me, if you have a power score of 15, a 14 is better than a 10 because you're getting closer to using all of your your ability at its max. And then I personally have it to where 1 is always a crit fail and 20 is always a crit success, even though in D&D second edition 20 was always the crit fail. So that's also another little bit of a system.
So weird. It breaks my brain to hear that.
Yeah, it doesn't sound natural, but that's why I've made some alterations for High Point to make things a little bit more feel goody, just a little bit more feel good. Oh, bro, this next one. Bro, you're going to love this one. Shit like this. We're only on the first discipline. We're probably not even going to get through all of them tonight because I realize that we're already on hour 3 and we're still in the first discipline.
Yeah,
but we're going to see. Okay, 30 minutes. Okay, let's just finish this one up. We'll finish up Claire Ascensions and then we'll have to pick this up again.
Okay. All right.
Because there's just a lot. But yeah, okay, so let's keep going. God, I love Psionicist. This next devotion, Feel Light. Wisdom -3, initial cost 7, 5 per round. Extrasensory power allows Psionicist to experience light through tactile sensation or touch. His entire body becomes a receiver for light waves. In effect, his body replaces his eyes. He can see what his eyes would normally reveal. His field of vision does not change. This power does not allow him to see in the dark, since there must be light for him to feel, and it doesn't give you like all-around vision. Nor does it counter magical darkness, which actually destroys or blocks light waves, so you can't see through magical darkness. The character gains a +4 bonus when saving against gaze attacks. Power score. The character can feel light in all directions if you crit succeed. And with a 20 or with a crit failure, the Psionicist becomes overly sensitive to light for 1d10 rounds. Exposure to light causes 1 point of damage per round, and the character cannot see.
So is this kind of like the all-around vision?
So no, you don't get all-around vision. It's just okay, real quick. His board, no, actually, so normally our streams are really only about 2, maybe 2.5 hours on more normal. This one's already 3 hours. So this one's a little bit longer than standard. But yeah, Fridays, we tend to do that on Fridays, though, because we can just kind of go however long. Kaga just has some other things. Otherwise, we'd probably go much later, but he has some things that he has to get to. So we might be cutting it a little bit short. So I've always looked at Feel Light in a couple of different ways. Like, Feel Light could be interesting. Like, let's say the Psionicist was blindfolded. Or let's say you've been kidnapped and you put a bag over your head. You cast Feel Light, and you can see as normal. You don't get to see all around, but you get to sense light and see it is like if you were to focus it, right? So if you could feel light on your back, you could look behind you, but you can't like look in all directions, right? But it basically gives you the ability to sense the light. And then that's why with the 20 or with the crit score, you can feel light in all directions. So essentially you can see in all directions. But the idea of is if you are in any way, if your eyes are hindered in any way. So if you've been blinded, if you've lost your eyes, if you've been blindfolded, this would overcome that.
Okay.
You could also consider this in fog. You could also consider this that could work against fog. If you have like fog cloud, you would just see right through it.
Oh, that's kind of sick.
So there's a lot of different ways that you could justify that. The next one, Feel Sound. Basically, it's identical to feeling light, but it makes the Psionicist's body sensitive to sound. You can also continue hearing when your ears are disabled. So again, you are deafened for any reason, you activate this, you can hear again. The power does not affect sound when there is none. However, nor is it affected inside magical silence. So again, if there's magical silence, you can't hear. And you get a +2 bonus against sonic attacks or effects, including a siren's song.
Cool.
If you crit succeed, you can detect noise like a thief of the same experience level. And if you crit fail, for 1d4 rounds, and if you crit fail for 1d4 rounds, any sound causes 1 point of damage per round it's garbled. Oh, and is garbled. So you can't understand it, and you can take damage.
And it causes damage.
Yeah. And then, of course, to round this all out, we have Hear Light. This one resembles Field Light, but it relies on the character's hearing rather than his sense of touch. So a character who has been blinded, either artificially, naturally, or by an injury, can see with his ears now. Any light waves which reach him are converted to sound, and he hears the image. The image his mind perceives is just like an image offered by normal sight. The character suffers no penalties for anything requiring vision. If you crit succeed, you can hear in the dark as if you had infravision. And if you crit fail, bright light causes deafness, and all other light is just a buzz. So as you can see, this is one of those aspects where it's like in combat, not a lot of this sounds great except for maybe like super situational things. But in roleplay, this shit could get so much more fun. No direction. No direction is such a clutch one for me. Like this is just one of those like, again, dungeon delving, traveling. This is such one of those like good plot point ones. Psionicus becomes his own compass by paying 1 PSP. Literally, its initial cost of 1 PSP. So just initiation, boom, 1 PSP. And you make a power check. You know which way is north. If you crit succeed, you are automatically maintained for 1 day. So you just know for 24 hours, you know north. And if you crit fail, you are disoriented and you cannot use the power for 1d6 hours. Okay. But again, for plot point purposes, for traveling, 1 PSP to just be like, that's north. Underground, like it's just one of those little subtle things that I just kind of like really appreciate. No location. Initial cost of 10 with no maintenance. This power is useful to characters who frequently travel by using teleportation, gates, or via other planes of existence. When it works, the power reveals general information about the character's location. The information is usually no more detailed than a response of a simple farmer when asked, "Where am I?" Typical answers include a few miles south of Waterdeep, as the crow flies, in a house of Kilgore the taxidermist, or adrift on the Blood Sea. So these are the kind of responses you'll get. The higher the result of the power check, the more precise the location. If the die roll is 8 or more, the location is specified within a mile or less. If it's a 7 or less, the location is specified within 10 miles.
So is this a location you're requesting, or is this the location that you're currently in?
So this is for the location you're in, because the area of effect is personal. So it's because if you're traveling via teleportation or gates or other planes, it's kind of like when you get where you are, you can kind of get like an idea of, okay, where did I end up? So it's for whatever the reason, if you don't know where you are.
Okay.
And then the higher the result, okay, so yeah. So the character can get additional information that is less specific than the initial answer if the player asks for it. The Psionicus does not make another power check. For example, if the DM first responds, "You're in a house of Kilgore the taxidermist," the player might then ask where the house is. The DM might answer by saying Kilgore's house is in Shandel in the kingdom of Furondi. So you can, you'll get an initial answer, and then sometimes you can probe for more without initial or additional cost, but it's kind of up to the DM's discretion on what information you get.
Okay.
If you crit succeed, the Psionicus learns the exact location he's trying to determine, and you crit fail, nothing within 100 miles can be located with this power for 24 hours.
So that makes me feel like it's not my current location.
But you have a range of 0 and an area of effect of personal, so it's not like you get to like, and I think the idea is like nothing within 100 miles can be located with this power. And that's the thing. It's saying that your preparation time is 5, your area of effect is personal, your range is 0, which means it's not like you can look for an object or tell me where is this object. It's basically saying like, where am I? Now, granted, what I read that as is nothing within 100 miles can be located. That tells me like, the house of Kilgore, where am I? Well, it's in this town. It's like those probing questions can't get any more clear within 100 miles. Like if it says, so basically if you crit fail, it says you're on a continent. Well, where is that continent? east of this continent. Well, what town am I in? You're in, this region of the continent, right? Like, you can ask those probing questions, but you can't get any more detail within 100 miles. That's how I interpret that. It is kind of weird written because it does insinuate that it means you can locate an object, but it says no location, but it doesn't specifically say. It says when it works, the power reveals general information about the character's location, not an object. So that last part does insinuate, but I just assume that it means you can't get detailed information in a radius.
Okay.
Poison sense. This is so fantastic. This is just one of those ones that's great. It's a 1 yard radius. Its initial cost of just one PSP, and you can detect the presence of poison and identify its location within 1 yard of your body, or your present standing if you're using the clairvoyance. So if you move yourself to a location, you could then use that power there. That's what we were talking about before about the stacking, like the enhanced abilities. That clairvoyance adds all of these to it. Any poison, including animal venom, can be detected. If you crit succeed, you determine the exact poison, and if you crit fail, if poison exists, the sense of it mentally overwhelms you, and the effect of those... and the effects match those of actual exposure. So basically, if you crit fail, you basically get poisoned. Radial navigation. So this is 4 to initiate, 7 to maintain. As long as his power is in use, the Sound Assist knows where he is in relation to a fixed starting point. In other words, no matter how or where he moves, he still knows the exact direction and distance to his starting point. So how clutch is that in a maze, a dungeon, or if you're just in general needing to get back to a certain spot, you can just put a fucking pin in it and know exactly at any point where that spot is. And again, as long as you maintain it.
The starting point of when you activated the power, or is that fixed starting point anywhere you want it to be?
Let's find out. So he cannot necessarily tell someone how to get back to the starting point, however. If he's in a maze or a dungeon, for example, he knows the starting point is 500 yards north, but you can't tell, which direction out of the maze will take you there. Radio navigation does enhance his ability to do so, however. Every time a character comes to a decision point, should I turn left or right, the DM makes a power check for him. If the check succeeds, the character knows which way he came. If the roll fails, he isn't sure. So that's kind of cool. You can kind of get your idea of... You can retrace your steps, essentially. This will help you retrace your steps.
More helpful for 7 PSP per round.
Radio navigation can be helpful in several ways that are not obvious. For example, teleportation and other extraordinary means of travel become simpler. Let's say a character cannot see a particular location because he's blindfolded. He leaves that location but uses radio navigation to get a fix on it. That means that he can still teleport back there. Furthermore, if a character has a fix on a place, he can reach it through astral plane in just several hours, the minimum possible, assuming, of course, that he can travel. So that's kind of cool. Basically, it speeds up your travel with certain ways. Radio navigation can aid in telepathy, too. If the Sound Assist wants to make a telepathic contact and he has a fix on the target's location, he doesn't suffer the usual penalties of range. If the character stops maintaining the power, he loses the fixed location. He can get it back by resuming his power and make an accessible power check within 6 hours. After 6 hours, location is lost. Only one location can be fixed at a time unless the character pays the maintenance cost individually for each. So it says that the range is 0 and the area of effect is personal. And it says, as long as the power is in use, the Sound Assist knows where he is in relation to a fixed starting point. So starting means you activate the power, and that's where you drop your pin in the GPS. You activate the power, then your pin drops, then you maintain it to get back there.
It's hard, but it makes sense. I would say, because if it works like that, then I can't be like, hey, that place I was yesterday, drop a pin there and get me back there.
Correct. Yeah, you can't drop a pin where you've been. Only you can drop a pin and then leave.
And then,
but like it said, let's say someone kidnaps you and
back to my teleport spot. That might be helpful.
Yeah, or let's say you're kidnapped and you're being held somewhere, right? And they're about to move you. Like, you know that you guys are about to be moved. You can then activate it before you're moved, drop that pin in, and then be moved, and then you can get back to wherever they were holding you to go get your buddies.
That's just so expensive.
It's so expensive.
I mean,
Again,
it's one
not
of
very
the
combat related,
few
but that
that
like
that
for the
has
actual campaign,
the maintenance cost is more than its original casting cost. Like
it's expensive.
that's out of all the ones that we've seen so far, it's the only one that's like that.
Yeah. The next one is going to be see sound. This is kind of akin to the feel light. You can see sound waves with your eyes. By converting the sound waves into light impulses, works much the same way as feel light. Only the character can see normally. Only a character that can see normally can use this power. So again, you can't have your eyes ripped out because then you don't have eyes to use. You can see sound even in darkness because sound waves don't require light. So even in magical darkness, you can still see. The character can still be blinded by silence, though. So if you're using this power and then they cast silence, then you're screwed. And then if you crit succeed, the maintenance power is 1 PSP per round instead of 3. And if you crit fail, loud sounds cause blindness and all other sounds are disturbing as bright lights. Next one, Spirit Sense. This one is an initial cost of 10 with no maintenance, and it's a 15-yard radius. Using this power allows Psionicis to sense the presence of spirits within 15 yards, meaning ghosts, banshees, wraiths, haunts, havecus, and revenants. If a spirit frequently haunts the location at hand, the Psionicis will know it. He will also know when a spirit is within 15 yards, but he won't be able to pinpoint its location. If you crit succeed, you know the exact location of the spirit that you sense. If you crit fail, the Psionicis has aggravated the spirit, and then the DM determines that result.
Rip.
And that is clairsentience. That was the entire aspect of clairsentience. Those were sciences. So that is, yeah, those are the science and emotions. That is going to take a little bit longer. We still have psychokinesis to go through. Let's see. What psychometabolism, psychoportation. We've already technically gone through metapsionics. And that would be it. So really, we have psychoportation, psychometabolism, psychokinesis.
I'm really looking forward to psychoportation.
I think we also have telekinesis too. Telepathy, yeah. So we have telepathy a little bit.
I think telepathy would be cool. Kinesis will be very fun. So there's two kinds of kinesis. There's pyrokinesis, or there's psychokinesis, which is moving things with your mind.
Yeah, most of this is like that.
Okay.
Yeah, like create object, detonate are some of the abilities. Disintegrate, molecular rearrangement, project force, telekinesis, animate object, animate shadow, ballistic attack, control body, control flames, control light, control sound, control wind, create sound, inertial barrier, levitation, molecular agitation, molecular manipulation, soften. Those are all the ones.
What the fudge is molecular manipulation?
Power allows you to weaken the molecular bonds within an object or structure. When someone stresses the object or strikes a blow at it, it snaps. You basically create a breaking point approximately 2 square inches per round. Deterioration occurs across a plane. 1 round's work is enough to fatally weaken most small objects, things like swords, ropes, saddles, straps, belts, and bows. Larger objects require more time at the DM's discretion. DM must decide how vulnerable this power makes the larger, oddly shaped objects like shields or doors. They should keep in mind that objects need not be in 2 pieces before it's virtually useless. For example, a little boat with a cracked hull is still unsafe at sea. And a shield that's split halfway across offers little or no protection. If successive blows don't shatter it, they certainly will rattle the holder's arm unmercifully. If you crit succeed, weakening occurs at twice the rate. If you crit fail, the item is strengthened. Now it requires twice the normal effort to weaken. So imagine being a rogue that has this psionic power and pickpocketing people by just walking up, just pinching their bag and then disintegrating the belt and then just walking away with the bag that fell. Like, you could literally pickpocket people without ever touching them. You could just be like, disintegrate, and then they just drop their money.
Oh, that's I'm curious how this works on living things, or if it works on living things.
I don't
Is
technically think it really because it says that
somebody's arm?
so it really is talking about like because you weaken the molecular bonds with an object or structure. So it does say object or structure. So creatures don't really count.
Okay. Okay.
But
Okay.
molecular agitation could be what you're looking for. So molecular agitation enables the user to excite molecules of a substance. Paper ignites, wood smolders, skin blisters, water boils. The list below shows what's possible depending on how many rounds the substance is agitated. 1 round. Readily flammable materials like paper, dry grass ignite. Skin becomes red and tender, 1 point of damage. Wood becomes dark. At 2 rounds, wood smolders and smokes. Metal becomes hot to the touch. Skin blisters at 1d4 points of damage. Hair smolders, paint shrivels. At 3 rounds, wood ignites. Metal scorches at 1d4 damage. Skin burns at 1d6 damage. Water boils. Lead melts. Damage does not increase after this round, but does continue. After 4 rounds, steel will grow soft, and after 5 rounds, steel will melt. So,
Well, all right.
you thought heat metal was a good thing in combat. This thing is 7 initial cost and 6 per round and has 40 yards. You could literally just sit back and have a cup of tea and watch someone burn to death in their armor. Because it takes 5 rounds to take their armor off, so that's going to be 4 rounds of 1d4. Where items are
5 minutes.
Oh yeah, 5 minutes. So where items are concerned, allow saving throws against destruction, but add a +10 penalty to the saving throw number. This heat is quite destructive, coming from inside the material than outside. So this is actually it actually understands that this is a different type of destruction than like heat metal. If you succeed after 1 round, the rate of agitation doubles. 3 rounds of damage occurs in just 2. 5 occurs in just 3. And if you fail, an item belonging to the psionicist chosen at random is affected for 1 round.
Oh,
So your own shit starts to burn.
hopefully it's not paper.
Bro, and at random, dude, can you imagine if you're a fucking mage and you have a spell book and you start to burn your spell book?
So when you think about a single piece of paper catching fire versus a closed book
I
catching fire,
I got you, but it's still just hella funny that you could just burn a single
if you
page
had
out of
a
your book.
scroll or something, that would be
Dude,
some
can you
shit. Like,
dude,
if
can you
found a
imagine like
scroll
you
like,
but imagine you
oh, shoot,
accidentally
now-
burn a single page, right? You have them burn a single page out of your spell book, so the DM will make a roll, and at one point randomly the DM will like decide what spell it was, and so at one point you try to go cast a spell and you don't realize that you don't have a page for it, so it like fails. But yeah, dude, this one right here, man, psychokinetic, dude. Like, create object. You have the power to assemble matter from thin air and the surrounding area to create solid objects. The object remains in existence as long as you pay the power's maintenance cost. So it's 16 initial, 3 per round to maintain. When you stop maintaining it, the object breaks into its constituent components. An object created this way can have any shape, color, or texture that you desire, provided it fulfills at least one of the following conditions. It fits entirely within a sphere, no more than 4 feet in diameter. Still a lot. Fits entirely within a cylinder, no more than 20 feet long and 1 foot in diameter.
You can create like a spear.
Fits entirely within a cylinder, no more than 2 feet high and 6 feet in diameter. Or weighs no more than 10 pounds. Only available materials within 20 yards can be used, so you have to use materials within and around you. However, the materials can be rearranged or reconstructed if the psionicist also has the power molecular rearrangement. By combining these two powers, you can manufacture diamonds from coal dust or a sword from rocks containing iron ore. If the power check results... Yeah? If you get a power score of 1, you have a flaw, like the sword will break if struck, diamonds contain impurities, obvious to a jeweler. So if you crit fail, there's going to be bad things. So if you crit succeed, the object is permanent. No cost is expended to maintain it.
Nigga.
OP as fuck, right?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
OP as fuck. If you crit, so
I'm
basically,
curious.
if you just sat down and just sat there all, so can you imagine the NPC that I have? Because I do have an NPC like this. Imagine the Psionicist that's an
But,
inventor
but
that all they do is sit there and
what
try to create things until they're permanent.
what would you have to do to get a key to be right? You
You'd have
need
to
to know
know
what
the
it's
locking
supposed.
mechanism. You'd either have to have a
You,
copy of the key, or you'd have to know the exact locking mechanism. Which you'd either have to be a multiclass and a
wow.
rogue to understand locks, or you'd have to have a copy of the key.
Would you be able to assemble it in the lock?
No, I'm gonna say no. Just because with this
Okay.
one, you still have to understand what you're making. You have to like visualize it. I'm gonna say that you can't just like put a bunch of clay in there and just wait for it to figure itself out. Um,
It's
but I mean,
fake
but
open.
being able to, but think about it. If you're a psionicist and you have a good memory, just getting eyes on the key, just getting an image of a key in your head. Hell, use clairvoyance to go somewhere to look at the key and then make a copy. Like again, I love the psionicist because everything can be stacked on each other. Like it even gives examples of how you stack, right? Um, oh yeah, the detonate spell. Jesus, one item, 8 cubic feet, prerequisites, telekinesis, and molecular agitation. So again, here's actually a good. We'll end with this one because we'll go with the rest of psychokinesis next month or next week. But like detonate. So this one actually has a prerequisite of telekinesis and molecular agitation. So you need to know both of those before you can use this one.
Okay.
But in this particular power, you can make a bush self-destruct, cause a zombie to explode. You basically take latent energy inside objects and use them to explode them. It does work against, so basically it's plants or inanimate objects. It also works against animated undead, skeletons, and zombies. Does not affect non-corporeal undead, such as ghosts. Um,
But like higher
and it,
level, like gas and stuff like that, or ghouls.
yeah, well, they have to have physical, so you can't do anything that doesn't have a physical form because it takes like the
They
physical
do,
energy. So,
they do, but I
like
mean
ghosts and
a
stuff aren't
higher level.
material.
But like so for like a ghoul, who is a material thing, but it's like a higher level one than just a zombie or a skeleton, but it still be
Hmm.
effective on something like that. There's no limit as long as it's physical.
Yeah, this one's basically saying like it works against skeletons and zombies because they're animated undead. It does not affect non-corporeal undead, such as ghosts. So it has to be corporeal. It has to have a physical form.
Right.
The detonation
Because
inflicts 1d10 points of damage upon all vulnerable objects within or which the Psionicist chooses to attack within 10 feet. So a saving throw versus breath weapon reduces damage to half. Determine what percentage of the object was destroyed. Multiply the result of the Psionicist's power check by 10. If the product is 100% or more, i.e., 100% destroyed, the target has been completely destroyed. So if you roll a 10 or higher, you completely destroy the object with this. Anything less means a few significant chunks remain. No more than 8 cubic feet of material can be destroyed with this power. A portion of a wall can be blown out, for example, but if the wall is 10 inches thick, an opening about 3 feet square will appear. You know, so you can get through it as long as all of the math works out. Crit succeed, and damage and range is doubled to 2d10 points at 20 feet and 20 feet. So instead of 1d10, it's 2d10 and doubles. And if you crits fail, the air surrounding the if you crit fail, the air surrounding the initiator detonates. Everyone within 10 feet of him is attacked. I'm assuming that means everyone takes the explosion damage.
Right.
But dude, like that is again,
I'm still
who needs
curious
turn
if this
undead when
thing
you can just
can.
make them explode?
That's what I'm saying. If this thing can like destroy a hulking zombie just because, like, that's insane.
Yeah.
Like
Now,
for
granted, it is
60,
it
say 60?
18 initial maintenance cost,
Oh wait, maintenance.
or no, initial cost, no maintenance, just initial cost of
Okay,
18.
okay. 18. Okay. I mean that's kind of hefty, but depending on how big these undead are, that could be freaking life saving.
Well, and it's really interesting too because you also have this like concept of it doesn't really explain this, right? But it does have a detonation damage output, right? but it also has a percentage output. So I guess my ruling would be that if you're up against like a skeleton and let's say it has 20 points of health, I would say that because you can only do a D10 of damage with this explosion, I don't know if I would let you explode 100% of it because the detonation wouldn't kill it. So it's like, I would almost say that yes, while you could detonate enough of it, I would say that it would also have to be like, if you have a brand new skeleton, right? Just got into the battlefield, 100 points of damage, you're not going to explode it with this right out the gate, right? Like it feels like that might be a little bit too much.
You're blowing up its hand.
Yeah, like you could definitely do something. I would have to say like maybe the idea is the explosion can be a maximum of like twice the amount of damage you've done. So in order to do 100% explosion, it has to be at least 50% damaged. If it's at 75% health, you can only do up to 50% damage, right? Or you know what I mean? Like you basically can, you can only do 25% damage. Like the idea is the explosion should probably match how much health it has, because otherwise, if you literally take a lich, well, I guess a lich is animated undead kind of. So I mean, I don't think you'd be able to explode a lich just by getting a high power score with 10 points of damage. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's I would do it more of the amount of exploding you can do is equal to twice the damage it's taken. So if it's taken 10% damage, it can take 20% of explosions. And it has to be 50% damaged in order to fully explode. I feel like that's a better balancing.
Interesting.
But it doesn't specifically say it. It does not specifically say it. It specifically says percentage. So, hey man, if a zombie can explode, zombie can explode.
Tutorial undead.
Yeah. Oh, I cannot wait to get into more of this though. Like animate shadow, animate object is a cool one. Control body is going to be such a good one. Yeah, I can't wait till we get into more of this. I wish we could have gone through the rest of these today. It's a lot, so much. We're probably going to have a part 3 just going over this. We may get into the character build. We may have to push that to a part 4. Who knows? But hey, that's the fun of when we're doing this live, right? But yeah, so that is part 2 of the Psionics handbook. We are going to finish next week. I'm pretty sure we can get through the rest of that next week with this kind of summary. So we'll go through the rest of those powers. We'll get Kage set up with a Psionicist in High Point. And then we will let you guys know. So we will be talking this weekend, probably on Sunday. We will be making an announcement on Discord for the next couple homebrew review rollouts. We've just gotten a lot sent to us. We have a few new people, so we just have to basically look at the chronological order, the order of new followers, and just get the next 3 weeks planned. Because that's kind of where we want to sit. We just kind of want to sit with 3 weeks planned out, just in case we get some new people in between there. But it makes it easier on us. So, kind of as a normal outro, if you liked what you saw today and you missed anything and you want to see what you missed previous in this episode, or if you want to see any of the episodes that you've seen before, you can check out our YouTube channel where we have all of our live videos on our VOD channel there. So I put that link in the chat if you want to see that. If you liked our topic today and you want to talk to us more about psionics, if you want to give us another topic to talk about in the future, if you want to give us any ideas that you didn't get to talk about on stream today, you can hit up our Discord. So I will put that link in the chat as well. Join our Discord. You can submit items and ideas that you've homebrewed yourself for Mondays where we can review them, or you can submit us topic ideas and suggestions, questions that you want to have us answer on stream here on Fridays. Otherwise, we just want to hang out, talk with you, join the community. It's great fun. We're building up the Discord right now, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We are almost on our way to affiliate too, so it does help if you give us a like and subscribe on YouTube as well here on Twitch. And for everybody in chat, Hizbor, Cosmic was here earlier. I know we saw Freeman here a little bit earlier. Thank you guys so much. I know Holepa jumped in real quick. We always really appreciate you guys showing up. It really does help us out. So thank you guys so much. I hope you had a wonderful week. I hope you have a great weekend ahead of you. We will be back on Monday. Keep an eye out for the Discord because we will be giving you guys an announcement on the next homebrew reviews. And next week we will continue with psionics. So I hope you all had a great time. Thank you so much. And that's going to be us. Cheers, guys.
It's my friends.
Oh, yeah, that's right. My thing's not working, so I can't just click out of here. All right, guys. Have a good weekend.